Okay. Okay, looks like a good collection.
A weird one, anyway.
Okay. We're on the air. All right. Good evening, everyone. I'm Tom Boak, Chairman of Kennebunkport Planning Board. It's a virtual planning board meeting using Zoom conferencing. The agenda's on the town website. Information, any other information is there too. If you wish to participate through Zoom, it's webinar 852-3198-8951. You can also dial the phone 929-205-6099 and then you'll be asked to enter that meeting number. But as always, you can watch us on channel 1301 or stream us on YouTube, Kennebunkport Television. During the meeting, only planning board and current participants are selected by the board. Current participants selected by the board will be on the screen with audio connected. All other participants will be blacked out and audio muted. If a public hearing is on the agenda, as items 2 and 3 are tonight, the applicant and board members will have discussions, after which I will open the public hearing. At that time, anyone who wishes to be heard should raise your hand in Zoom, and we'll recognize those people one at a time. If you happen to be using a telephone to connect, raise your hand is *6, toggle mute is *9. Items 4 and 5, Ocean Woods Resort and Colony Hotel North, are continuations of initial continuations of initial review. Only board and applicants will be discussing. Meeting is, again, a long agenda. So if there's something, we get to 9 p.m. and haven't started something, it'll end up getting continued to the next meeting. So all that being said, I see that everybody is here. So I guess I should call the roll just for completeness. So I'm here. And Nina?
I'm here.
Scott?
I am here.
Okay. Ed?
Here.
Larry?
Here.
George?
Here.
And John?
Here.
All right. That's what I. Very good. Okay, so we just recently got the minutes. I know that I don't think Ocean Woods will be having gold carts rather than golf carts. But,
Oh, yeah.
I might have to verify that with Ralph, but my suspicion is that that's a typo. Since we just got those, do you want to defer? I mean, they just got sent out this afternoon. Has everybody had a chance to read them?
No, I haven't.
Okay. Why don't we defer the acceptance of last meeting's minutes to the next meeting then?
Yeah.
So
Okay, do you need a motion for that?
yeah, why not?
Okay, I'll move to defer approving the minutes for last meeting until the next meeting.
I'll second it.
Okay, all in favor? Just say aye.
Aye, yeah.
Aye.
Okay, so we'll defer those to next time,
All right.
which brings us to the Verizon Wireless Scott Anderson Esquire authorized agent, the finding of facts for approval to install a small cell wireless communications facility.
Okay.
So, Larry, would you proceed? Read
Okay.
as fast as you possibly can.
Okay, I'll read it as quickly as I can. So, this is the Kennebunkport Planning Board finding of fact and decision, application of Verizon Wireless to co-locate a small cell facility on an existing utility pole. Following a site plan review pursuant to the Kennebunkport Land Use Ordinance held on June 16, 2021 and continued on July 7, 2021, and a public hearing held on July 7, 2021, the Kennebunkport Planning Board makes the following findings of fact and conclusions and renders the following decision subject to the conditions enumerated below. Findings of fact are as follows. 1, the applicant is Verizon Wireless, 118 Flanders Road, Westboro, Massachusetts, 01581. 2, the owner of the utility pole is Fairpoint Communications / CMP, 83 Edison Drive, Augusta, Maine, 04336. 3, applicant has authorized attorney Scott D. Anderson, Vero Law, 1 Portland Square, Portland, Maine, 04101-4054 to act as agent for this matter. 4, the existing utility pole proposed for support of the small cell telecommunication equipment is positioned in right-of-way adjacent to the property located at 674 Kings Highway, which is formerly 180 Kings Highway, Kennebunkport, Maine, 04046, which is further identified as map 34, block 2, lot 14 on the municipal tax assessor's maps. 5, the existing utility pole is located in Goose Rocks and shoreland zones and is designated J50.1/12S. 6, the existing utility pole and proposed small cell telecommunications equipment are located within 50 feet of a residence. The installation of the telecommunications equipment is therefore subject to review by the planning board. 7, applicant proposes to align all aspects of the installation with the requirements of the wireless telecommunication ordinance and land use ordinance for Kennebunkport, with the exception of the following 2 approved waivers. 7A, submission requirement for existing physical features on the site and within 200 feet thereof, Ref 10.6.C.7. Comment, the site is an existing public right-of-way with none of the resources identified. Installation of the small cell facility will not require any excavation or impact to soils or any groundwork. 7.B, submission requirement for topography, including reference benchmark, Ref 10.6.C.8. Comment, the site is an existing right-of-way and there will be no alteration of topography or surface conditions as part of the installation of the facility. 8, applicant proposes to install components necessary for small cell wireless telecommunications, including A, the cantenna, B, the remote radio head, C, electrical load center and associated meter, D, additional brackets and wires necessary for operation, and E, the total weight of all the components together equals about 230 pounds distributed at various locations along the utility pole. Structural analysis confirms adequacy of pole for this additional weight. 9, applicant has demonstrated a legal interest in the installation by providing a copy of the pole attachment agreement for communication antenna attachments number 2095 dated January 25th, 2016 between Northern New England Telephone Operations LLC doing business as Fairpoint Communications NNE licensor and Central Maine Power Company licensor and Portland Seller Partnership doing business as Verizon Wireless licensee. 10, applicant has also demonstrated a legal interest in this installation by providing a copy of the agreement dated April 27, 2017 between residential property owners at 674 Kings Highway, formerly 180 Kings Highway, and Verizon Wireless, permitting Verizon Wireless to access the utility pole for the purpose of installing and maintaining telecommunications equipment pertinent to this application. 11, applicant has further demonstrated a legal interest in the installation by providing a copy of FCC ULS license L00006911, including FCC registration number 00036828887. 12, the telecommunication facility is permitted in the Goose, Rocks, and Shoreland zones as essential services. 13, pursuant to the requirements of Article 10.10.a of the Land Use Ordinance, guidelines for decisions, the planning board shall approve a site plan application unless it makes a negative ruling on one or more of the following identified findings, which would otherwise compel denial. A, the proposed use meets the definition or specific requirements set forth in the Land Use Ordinance and will be in compliance with applicable state or federal law, finding yes. B, the proposed use will not create fire safety hazards and will provide adequate access to the site or to the buildings on the site for emergency vehicles, finding yes. C, the proposed exterior lighting will not create hazards to motorists traveling on adjacent public streets and is adequate for the safety of occupants or users of the site and will not damage the value and diminish the usability of adjacent properties. Finding not applicable. D, the provisions for buffers and on-site landscaping provide for adequate protection to neighboring properties from detrimental features of the development. Finding yes. Comment, the small cell facility will be positioned on the existing utility pole so as to be visually unobtrusive as much as possible. E, the proposed use will not have a significant detrimental effect on the use and peaceful enjoyment of abutting property as a result of noise, vibrations, fumes, odor, dust, glare, or other cause. Finding yes. F, the provisions for vehicular loading and unloading and parking and for vehicular and pedestrian circulation on the site and onto adjacent public streets will not create hazard to safety. Finding not applicable. G, the proposed use will not have a significant detrimental effect on the value of adjacent properties, which could be avoided by a reasonable modification of the plan. Finding yes. Comment, the small cell facility will pose little additional effect on adjacent properties which already exist due to the supporting utility pole. H, the design of the site will not result in significant flood hazards or flood damage and is in conformance with applicable flood hazard protection requirements. Finding yes. I, adequate provision has been made for disposal of wastewater or solid waste and for the prevention of ground surface water contamination. Finding not applicable. J, adequate provision has been made to control erosion or sedimentation. Finding not applicable. K, adequate provision has been made to handle stormwater runoff or other drainage problems on the site. Finding not applicable. L, the proposed water supply will meet the demands of the proposed use or for fire protection purposes. Finding not applicable. M, adequate provision has been made for the transportation, storage, and disposal of hazardous substances and materials as defined by state law. Finding not applicable. N, the proposed use will not have an adverse impact on significant scenic visas or on significant wildlife habitat, which could be avoided by reasonable modification of the plan, finding not applicable. O, the proposed use will not cause unreasonable highway or public road congestion, finding yes. P, existing off-site ways and traffic facilities can safely and conveniently accommodate the increased traffic generated by the development as far away from the development as the effects of the development can be traced with reasonable accuracy, finding not applicable. When a proposed development will be located within the shoreland zone or resource protection zone, in addition to the requirements of the Kennebunkport Land Use Ordinance, Article 10, the Town-wide Regulation, Article 6, the performance standard for specific activities and land uses in Article 7, approval of the development also require that the board makes positive findings based on information presented that the proposed use, A, will maintain safe and healthful conditions, finding yes. B, will not result in water pollution, erosion, or sedimentation to surface waters, finding yes. C, will adequately provide for the disposal of all wastewater, finding not applicable. D, will not have adverse impact on spawning grounds, fish, aquatic life, bird, or other wildlife habitat, finding not applicable. E, will conserve shore cover and visual as well as actual points of access to inland and coastal waters, finding not applicable. F, will protect archaeological and historic resources as designated in the comprehensive plan, finding not applicable. G, will avoid problems associated with floodplain development and use, finding not applicable. H, is in conformance with the performance standards set forth in section 5.6, erosion and sedimentation control of the Kennebunkport Land Use Ordinance, finding not applicable. Any negative finding by the board means the application has been denied. The application is otherwise complete. Conclusions. Article 10.10.A of the Land Use Ordinance mandates that the planning board shall approve a site plan application unless it makes one or more identified findings that would otherwise compel denial. And as noted above, the board makes no such findings. Decision, the site plan application identified above is hereby approved. Conditions of approval, if any, pursuant to Article 10.11 and 10.112.E. 1. Applicant pursuant to 10.12.E shall notify the planning board prior to the transfer of rights to construct and approve project. 2. Applicant must record a copy of this decision and provide proof of such recordation in the York County Registry of Deeds before any permits may issue or before any construction activity may commence. 3. Applicant shall comply with all terms and conditions of the town of Kennebunkport ordinances as well as the main DEP approvals. 21st of July, 2021.
Very good. Okay. Any comments on that, or shall we approve it?
I would move to approve the findings as read.
Second?
I'll second.
Okay. I'm in favor. Nina?
In favor.
Scott? You're muted again, Scott.
No, I
All right.
said in favor.
Okay. Ed
In favor.
and Larry.
In favor.
Okay. So please go and sign the finding of facts in the next couple of days, and please wish Lisa our best. We're really going to miss her, and I think it's really important we put something in the minutes that says how much we're going to miss her, or something, or how happy we were with her work. So anyhow, that leads us to item number 2, which is 210504, John and Jennifer Schaefer, Peterson Design Group, and I believe we have Mr. Peterson. Can we bring him forward? Yes, Eric Peterson needs to be brought forward, please. Oh, there he is.
Hello, all.
Okay,
Mm.
so
Planning board
this is
member.
a continued public hearing from the last time, so if you can
Yes.
just give a brief update. And
I will. I trust that you received the supplemental information that I forwarded to Lisa.
yes,
Yep.
Great. So I'll bring that up. So a few things to respond to what we talked about last time. We added a note to our narrative that talks about the promise not to use pesticides or fertilizers on the property. We put a note about windows facing the rear will either have screens or bird decals on them. We added a hood to the rear door to satisfy Ms. Perlmutter's request right here. So that will cast a shadow over the door that will inhibit the bird strike question. Is that clear right there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then it shows up on the back elevation as well. We added the note to the site plan that shows the proposed first floor elevation. I'd like to circle back around to that before we finish tonight. And then I added a matrix to the drawing that shows the existing and proposed lot coverage, square footage of house, driveway, steps, shower, walkways, and filled in the information based on what we talked about last time, using some of our lot coverage to create a patio inside the footprint of where the existing house used to be. So we've used up some of our square footage that was remaining for lot coverage based on what the old house had, and added a walkway to the front door and a walkway at the back door. I think that may be all the changes that we talked about. Can anyone else think of something that we missed? So the one question based on an email with the Schaefers was the elevation of 15.75 responds to the proposed flood elevation for this area is 13 at this point. Best information, or less, Werner, right? Probably.
Yeah, that's correct. Yep. That elevation may come down by a couple of feet, but that's best information right now is 13 in that area, but that may be revised at some point here in the future.
And since the 13, thank you. And since the 13 is based on the old NGVD, it needs to be adjusted to the new NGVD by 0.75 feet roughly. So we not only need to elevate this 2 feet above the proposed flood elevation, but then add that 0.75 feet to correspond to the new NGVD, which puts it at elevation 15.75. The Schaefers are wondering if they could even go further and put it at 16.75, seeing as we don't have a height restriction problem. If that's something the planning board could leave open as an option, that it could be either 15.75 or 16.75. So the nothing would change as far as the bird's eye view, and nothing would change as far as any sort of a violation of the height restriction. It just leaves it open to them to raise it a little further if they so choose to.
So your height in the first floor wouldn't change, you're just changing the height of the house.
Right.
Okay.
Well, you'd be raising your first floor elevation. I mean, that would be the point of it. Would be I'm assuming that's the case, Eric, that you would.
Correct.
That first floor elevation, could potentially be at whatever 16.75 there, as opposed to 15.75. This is all pier foundation, correct?
It's actually it's a poured concrete foundation with flood vents.
Okay, got it.
It's a poured concrete crawl space
Crawl
right
space.
here.
Yeah.
With access doors and flood vents front and rear. Yep.
Okay, all right.
So, Werner, I don't think we'd particularly care as long as it's within the height restrictions and such, whether it's 1575 or 16. If we approve this plan, isn't that change to 1675 something that you could do in code enforcement when they provide the final drawings?
Yes, yeah. Yeah, again, I don't see an issue with the overall height being called into question. You know, it's not a question of expansion, you know, here. You know, I mean, you may have to, you know, you're probably going to have to add a step or two, you know, but that's all going to fall onto existing coverage.
That's right.
You know, based on, you know, what Eric has drawn. So, you know, certainly that's something that you know, we would just deal with that through the code office.
Okay.
So are we going to treat this just as information of something that may be happen? I don't know if it really needs to, we don't.
No, I think
need to comment on it.
I think you can. I mean, if you want to comment on it in some fashion, you can. You know, you can make a notation in the findings that, you know, final flood elevations, you know, to be determined, you know, between the architect and a code office, you know, or something like that.
Something like final flood elevation to be determined, but not less than 15.75. That is.
Well, I mean, arguably they could go lower. That could be, and that would still be compliant, depending on, you know, depending on what they
proactive.
Right. So,
Okay.
I mean, it doesn't sound like that's something that they would want to do, but
I'm a little confused here. If they raise the elevation of the first floor, then they have to raise the ceiling on the first floor, and they would want the same height to the ceiling on the second floor. So they're actually going higher with the roof line. Right.
Correct.
So that is something that we would have to address in the findings, that the roof line may be at such and such or such and such, but will still be within the guidelines.
Yeah, under the, I guess one way to address that would be just to say that any corresponding increase in roof height should be allowable as long as it falls under the town's description of maximum building height, you know, from original grade 30 feet. It gives you some buffer in there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Yes.
sure.
I mean,
Okay.
as long as the roof height is within the guidelines, then it doesn't matter, and you're above the flood level where you want to be, then it doesn't matter what the height of your first floor is, you know, if the first floor to the ceiling is, or the second floor to the ceiling is. They have, you know, they can arrange that any way they want.
yeah, correct. That's all volume that's been accounted for in Eric's calculations here.
Right.
Okay, well, yeah, I think we could cover it in the finding of facts. Seems like a good thing to do.
Are those trees you've circled in there?
Those show existing trees that remain. Mhm.
Right. Okay.
Okay, so are there any other questions from the board?
I just had one detail. I'm pretty sure Eric's already gone over it, but the driveway's on the right there, is that correct?
The driveway used to be on the right, now it's on the left.
Now it's on the left. And there's no like
Curve.
garage or
Oh,
any sort
no,
of covering or any of that kind of, any sort of
no.
no covering? It's open air, huh?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, if there are no other questions from the planning board, then I would like to reopen the public hearing, which we started last time. So I would ask if there are any hands raised for comments from the public. Okay. Well, in that case, I guess I'll close the public hearing and ask ask if we are ready to make a motion to approve this.
Okay, I move to approve the application.
I'll second it.
Okay. So going through the roll call again, I'm in favor. Nina?
I'm in favor.
Scott?
In favor.
Ed?
In favor.
Larry?
In favor.
Okay, so we'll have finding of facts next time. It doesn't, who took this as lead? It doesn't say.
I did.
Oh, that's what I thought. Okay.
Yeah, I need to adjust the findings I've been writing up, so it'll have to be 2 weeks from now.
That's not a problem. Yeah, I mean, you can adjust it for that extra foot of height that they might want to do, but,
Mhm.
okay, super. Well, that eliminates that item, so now we
Thank you
are,
very much.
okay, thank you, Eric. So Eric can go away and Bradley Lown, if he's out there, could be brought forward. All righty, thank you.
Thank you for promoting me.
Well, okay. So, yeah, we've, as you know, last time we had all just received your stuff, even though you'd sent it before. So we've had a chance, I believe, to read everything through again. So I wondered, first off, what's the status with MDEP? Have you heard
I'm
anything?
still waiting. Still
Okay,
waiting.
but- yeah, because they at least from what Werner has told me, they would usually give you what's necessary from inland fishery and wildlife, who is owned by them. So that would probably answer any questions about if there's. I know you don't think there's much in the mudflat, but what it is. But okay, let me ask a couple questions. What is the actual size of the L? Because in your letter, it says that you have 4 by 70 foot pier with an 8 by 8 foot L. And then
Right.
elsewhere, it looks, I can't figure out. There's too many different pictures, all of which are not consistent. How big is the L?
Sure. Well, I'd like it to be 8 by 8, but probably I'm not allowed to. So I think at the last hearing, it was suggested that it be 4 feet wide, as if the pier was taking a 90-degree turn.
Yes. That would be consistent with the land use ordinance.
Yep, that's all right with me.
Okay. Fine. Now, in terms of the height above the ground, it needs to be 1 foot above the ground. Now, your pictures show, your page 55 indicates that it goes all the way down to the ground, so it's not 1 foot above. So.
All right. Well, it goes all the way down to the ground only where you step onto it at the top of the beach. Otherwise, it's more than 1 foot off the ground.
So that has a bit of a problem with 511B6. I don't know if other people want to comment about that, but that's somewhat of an issue now. But I'm more interested in the removal of the old piles. You've got some number of piles that are not going to stand up to putting new pier on them there, so you're going to have to take them out. So what you said is,
I don't know that that's true. I in my letter, I asked for the board's flexibility. these pilings are probably adequate, all of them, to support this pier, but if I get a permit and I'm going to rebuild this thing, mostly by myself, then I'd like a little leeway on this. If you really want an answer, then I'll just tell you I'll replace all of them. But I know you probably don't like the wait and see approach for me to see how they look under the ground and so on. So if you want a commitment, then I'll just tell you I'd replace all of them. They're all in pretty good shape, but I might as well replace them while I'm at it.
Okay, the problem with replacing them all, if you read the details of your Army Corps of Engineer, it talks about all sorts of things on what you do with the old piles, the new piles, the securing them off of the away from the wetlands. And there's also the problem, if you really do need a backhoe down there to take the old piles out, there's definitely going to be some erosion issues related to driving that little guy up and down to the beach that, are going to be trouble. So, rather concerned by that.
Well, okay. This has got to happen all the time when people do this, but what could I do? What is the typical thing that's done when a backhoe drives onto a rock beach?
Well, could I just insert maybe a
Please,
couple of comments?
yeah.
So it's kind of, so the proposal is sort of at the concept stage. And I think the overall question is, it would really help us understand what you're going to do if you had like some sort of a construction plan or something like that, because when you talk about removing the existing piles and replacing them, the existing ones are, even if they're in good shape, well, for a timber pile in marine use, you might get about 60 years out of it. So these are pretty close to the end of their useful life. I mean, if you go down there, you may find they're in worse shape than you expect. So before you finalize this, you may want to actually do an inspection of all of the piles. Replacing all the piles is a good idea, I think. I mean, I haven't actually seen the location, but at this point, they're old enough that they qualify for replacement, probably. But in terms of removing the existing piles, of course, I haven't seen it, but I think the concern is that we don't know exactly how well they're secured to the foundation, right? Or how heavy they are. So you're definitely going to need some sort of lifting equipment, but you also need to break the piles free before you pick them up. So the idea of removing the piles could be more complicated than it seems on the surface, is all we're saying. And then, of course, there's the issue about the backhoe. In some locations, the dock construction is done from an offshore position, from a barge of some sort that just is static, and there's some footprint of the barge for some period of time, and then it moves away. So accessing the site from shore poses some specific issues, erosion or just damaging the area. And so it's almost like you need to have some sort of temporary, I don't know what would be, what comes to mind is a board road or something that you would put in for the backhoe until you were done, and then you would remove the board road, something like that. So the overall construction plan, I think, it would really help to solidify our perception about what's going on, if you could provide, you know, a little more detail in what you're really going to do, and starting with the condition of the piles.
All right, if I could just comment on that. I've invited everyone on the board to go down and take a look at this at high tide or low tide. Have you all done that? And if you haven't done it, why have you not gone down to look at it? You can see close up what the pilings look like. I would think that would be something you would have done by now. Has everybody done that?
No?
No.
I don't believe anyone's done that.
Did anybody read my letter where I suggested and invited you to go to the site and take a look at it? Did anybody see that? I'm sorry.
I'm not sure that everybody could judge how old those pilings are and whether they need replacing. I know that I'm not capable of doing it unless the pilings are really falling apart. And,
they're not falling apart.
Can I interject, Brad, please, just for a second, as far as the planning board's remit? And Warren, maybe I need your help on this. Just consider for a second if this was an existing pier, and one or more of the pilings had gotten to the point where it needed to be replaced. What would be the review that would be required, and who would do it? I don't believe it would come to planning board.
No, you're correct. I mean, if we were dealing with a, you know, say for instance, a maintenance, a maintenance project, where a property owner was requesting to replace a number of pilings.
Yeah.
Now, typically we would not, we typically wouldn't be in a position to go down ahead of time and render a decision saying, okay, you need to replace this one, and this one. That's not the position of the code enforcement office to do that.
Right.
So arguably that's a determination that the property owner has come to with, an appropriate professional, I would think, that would, have helped render a decision which ones are structurally sound and which ones aren't. We would be involved in, wanting to understand how the piling's going to be replaced, and then we would, subsequently we'd do an inspection, to see that the piling was installed, per what they said that they were going to do.
So it would require a permit, I think, is what I got out of that. And I wasn't even sure of that.
Sure. Yes, that's correct. Yeah, we would, that would be considered a structural repair. It's not a decorative, that's not a decorative repair, to replace a pile, and we would want to see a permit for that.
I see. Okay.
Yep.
So I'm just a little concerned that we're getting into territory that really isn't in our normal remit here, and that I don't want to get this whole process wrapped around the axle.
Sure. No, and to, I'll further, I'll speak a little bit more about some of the things that, that I'm hearing being discussed here.
Please.
Relative to, equipment, I know there's, a concern about having a backhoe on a rocky beach. I don't see that necessarily as a particular concern. Having a piece of equipment there, on a rocky beach like that is relatively stable activity. The town regularly, has had the use of heavy equipment on the beach, and that's, that's considered a temporary impact. And as long as the equipment, the thing that, we're mostly concerned with there is that we're concerned with making sure that the equipment is in good shape, right? We want to make sure we have something that doesn't have, any leaks or things of that nature that could cause, an environmental, could cause environmental harm. And even with the replacement of a piling in the mud flats, with an incoming and an outgoing tide, those types of temporary impacts are exactly that. They're a temporary impact that most of your environmental agencies don't tend to get too concerned with. They are concerned, and we are concerned with permanent impacts. That would be, that would be the addition of any pilings, whether or not, whether or not there's an increase in size, anything that is that per the state, would be deemed a permanent impact, something that is proposed to remain there in place. Those are the things that we have, concern with. But typically, the construction of these activities, I mean, we oversee and work with dredge applications on a regular basis that, arguably have a significantly higher, impact, to these types of areas. I do think, the question of, are these pilings, which of the pilings are sound? That's a good question. I mean, I would, again, in a typical dock application, we would be looking at information that would have been prepared by a professional that would have rendered that decision, just as you've seen in other applications that you have, with a prepared drawing that would show what the proposed design is. So,
Mr. Chairman, may I say something?
Sure, please do.
Okay, thank you. Our neighbors, my beloved neighbors, the Bowes and the Pargellis, spent $250,000 building a pier, and they hired a contractor to come down from Rockland, the Proc company. They had a gigantic barge. I don't have that kind of money. When I rebuilt this pier, I was 48 years old, and now I'm 63. I did it all myself. I dug a hole with a crowbar and a shovel, and I'll do that again if I have to. But this is a homemade pier. I'm going to rebuild it. I don't want the board to overthink this and be concerned about erosion. If there's a concern about a small backhoe coming down and causing erosion, I don't think that's warranted. I really don't, but this is not my call. It's your call. I'm going to rebuild the darn thing myself. All of these pilings are sound. If there's an issue about replacing them, I won't replace them. I'll just put the pier on top of the existing pilings. I just would prefer to replace some of them. So I'm sorry.
Okay. Let me continue kind of what Ed just said and connect it with Werner. So as I understand this, Werner, the pilings themselves are grandfathered. They're there, and as such, they are grandfathered. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yes. From a zoning perspective, yes. The pilings that are there are grandfathered pilings and piers.
So what he is asking the board to do is to put a new pier boards as stated, 4 feet wide, etc., going out across those existing grandfathered pilings. If he has to replace one of those, he'd have to come to you and say, I have to replace a piling.
For permit.
And get a permit to replace that piling. Is that correct?
That's correct, yep.
So is not the easiest thing, isn't the correct thing to do from our standpoint to assume that what we're doing is approving the putting of the pier boards on those pilings. If he has to replace those pilings, you're going to have to get involved in that at the code enforcement level.
That's correct. Yes. Yep. If we perform an inspection, when Mr. Lown calls us for an inspection down there, and if we observe any pilings that are in our judgment, deemed to be questionable or structurally, that appear to be structurally unsound, at that point in time, just like with any other building project, the code office does have the authority to either require an analysis of it, or can require a replacement of it. The concept is that you don't rebuild a structure onto onto existing structure that is not sound or not fit.
So Tom, you're let me just put it another way. You're suggesting that if the applicant were to reframe the application and come to us with a request to build this structure on top of the existing pilings. That would be, maybe that partitioning would allow us to proceed forward along the lines that the applicant's asking us to do. But part and parcel with that is the applicant would be strongly advised to have such an inspection of the pilings performed by the code enforcement office before he committed to building said structure atop it. You don't want to take it apart again, do you?
No.
You've been there, done that.
No, again, just understand, like it's, it is, that's not typically something, we don't advise on a structural analysis. We, that's, we're not, the code enforcement office, we are not design professionals,
Right.
In that regard. So we're not responsible for the design. What we're looking for is, sound construction practice. We're looking for, items to make sure that what's being constructed on is safe and structurally sound. So I understand it's a little bit of a fine line, but it's not uncommon. Again, we get folks that ask us, say, well, does this work or does that work? Well, we can look at a span table or a chart, but ultimately, we're not the ones making a declaration that we're not design engineers. I guess just to keep it simple.
You're not empowered to certify that this is safe or insurable or anything else. You could give your opinion.
That's correct. Yes, the code office would look at that and just make a judgment call based on the information that we have available.
So, yeah.
But Brad, what you were intending to do was go out there and figure out if some number of them had to be replaced?
Well, actually, I was going to test it out and see how hard they are to replace. That's what I was going to do. And if it's too difficult for me, then I'll replace none or a few of them. I know that's difficult for the board to adjudicate that, but that's what my intention was to see how it goes. Now, this is going to depend on whether I've seen these small backhoes, and I was going to maybe rent one of those or get somebody to drive down, and that might really help. If I could do that, I think I'd replace quite a few of them. But if I'm going to do it with my own crowbar, then I don't think I will. So it's really contingent on what the board thinks and says.
Well, again, I'm saying that perhaps it isn't contingent on what the board thinks if you don't come with that project to the board.
I understand. That's a good point, and thank you for raising it.
Okay.
So I just, two things. So if the existing piles are grandfathered, is the elevation of the bottom beam less than 1 foot above the ground also grandfathered? I guess so, huh? So the configuration of the existing beam.
So those cross beams.
Not necessarily, because those aren't there. What's there, as I understand what I've seen is, the posts themselves are there.
Okay, so are we
So
gonna?
the cross braces are not there?
Yes, they are. I can show you a picture of it. It's in my packet, but
I thought it
I don't
thought they were.
I don't have a problem
Raising that.
having the pier sections, the horizontal sections, 1 foot above the ground. That's okay with me. I don't know if the board can see this. Can the board see this?
Yeah.
Yes.
All right, let me just rotate it for a second. And you can see that it's just, for the most part, it's all a foot above, except on the very high end. It might not be a foot right there, but I don't know if that's really something to be concerned about.
Well, that's my point. I guess we're going to just grandfather that as an existing configuration to be maintained.
Well, and I think, in this circumstance, so here, I'll say that I think it's important to understand really what's the intent of the 1 foot above, the grade, question here. And, in the performance standards, when you look at docks, and we've seen it in a lot of the different DEP permits. Really, what you're dealing with there, whenever when you have an elevated dock or pier, is you're dealing with marsh grass underneath, and so it's a question of it's a question of marsh grass. So I think in this particular situation, if I look at it, I don't know that the area that is less than a foot there, appears to be a portion that goes over the rocky beach area, and then once you get to a section where you're over the mud flats, you're beyond that that 1 foot, I believe.
Yeah, it's right there at the very beginning.
Right there. Yeah, it's just right there at the very beginning.
Assuming that we don't care, assuming that the cross braces, which are also already there, are part of the grandfathered pier, grandfathered pilings.
Yep. And and the board could certainly request that the bracing, that supports the platforms, if it doesn't meet that 1 foot, can be brought up to meet that.
Yes, I have no problem with that.
Okay.
Okay, great, thank you. And then back on my laborious questions about the use of the backhoe. Really, I mean, I know you're going to need some lifting. I expect you're going to need some lifting devices, but my questions were aimed at what was going to be the impact of tracking a backhoe across the grassy area, because you're not going to store it on the beach. You're going to have to take it back somewhere away from the beach every day while you're using it. So what sort of damage could occur tracking it back and forth on the, I'm not sure, whatever there's there, grass or wetlands area. I'm not quite sure what's there, but
it's all lawn area. It's all lawn area there. It goes from kind of a rocky beach up to kind of a developed lawn area, and a driveway that kind of dead ends into the into the rocky beach.
So basically, it doesn't really matter so much from our perspective about.
I'm not concerned with the parking of equipment on site.
Okay.
Up in the yard or the driveway area.
All right. Okay. Great. Thank you. That's good. Thank you. So where are we now? So we're requesting, like Ed said, to ask Mr. Lowe to recast his application just for replacing the deck boards. Is that the idea?
I think that would, replacing the deck boards and, if necessary, elevating the cross braces. Well, then
even less of a change to the application to state that the existing pilings, the grandfathered pilings, are going to be reused.
Yeah.
And any maintenance to those, work that separately in advance.
Yeah, maintenance of the pilings, given their grandfathered, is not in our purview. So as long as you're using existing pilings, then it's fine. If the existing pilings happen to be ones you just replaced with a permit from Werner, then it's still an existing piling.
So there's 3 components: making it 4 feet wide, and using
Making the L, the L being still 4 feet wide. Would that start changing pilings to do that?
No,
Cross bracing.
just that the platform in that area is, instead of being 8 feet wide, it would be 4 feet wide.
Right.
Right.
Okay, so that makes it pretty simple. So the new application would say that everything's going to be 4 feet wide. You're going to use existing pilings, and then you're going to elevate the lowest members to 1 foot above the soil there. That's
Well, yeah. I mean, if you're talking about raising the cross pieces,
Yeah.
you're saying that the top of the cross piece should be 1 foot above the ground, and that's
Minimum.
that's okay. with me.
The bottom of the cross piece is the problem.
The bottom?
Yeah.
Well, why should the bottom be a foot? Nothing's happening. It's just a cross piece. I'll show the. top, the platforms rest on the top of the cross piece.
Oh, I understand, the platforms are fine, but what I'm saying is that it said, the wording is no portion of the structure. All portions have to be above a foot.
All right,
So the very bottom of those cross pieces needs to come up a little bit. That's all.
I understand, yeah.
Brad, I think if you go to page or picture number 43, that was on your, that we just had up there.
Yep.
Yeah, so that's 46. So I think it's 43. Yeah, and then there you go, and then drop the image down a little bit so we can see it. I think it's the next picture below.
Yeah, right in there.
Yep. Yep. So yeah, so here you can see clearly the transition there between, going from that rocky beach area to the marsh grass.
Yeah.
And so Brad, what the board's looking for here is that cross brace, where, and I think, I'm going to suggest this, that, before you get to that marsh grass area, that all of those horizontal structures, need to be elevated there at that minimum, width.
I used stainless steel bolts in 2006, and I'm going to try to reuse them.
Cool.
Yeah, good.
So then we the stairs.
Yeah.
I guess I'm not. Go ahead, Brad. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's all right. I've heard the Miss Perlmutter discuss the stairs, and I want to keep the stairs in year round, and I'm going to bolt them to the secure cross piece. I'm going to secure them to the mud. If you visit the site, you see that this is not a wave zone, and the FEMA agrees with that. There's no real wave action in there. There's nothing that's going to disturb that staircase in the winter. You have to see it to understand it. So I would have liked to have you gone down there to see it. It's a very protected area. It's different from even different from our neighbors, the Pargellises, because it's around the corner. So that's why FEMA has given us this letter of map revision, because there's just no wave action, and I'd like to keep the stairs in. There's nothing in the ordinance that requires that they be removed, as far as I can see. I respect that you are making sure the ordinance is complied with, but I don't see anything in there.
Well, the stairs have the same dumb one foot thing. So it says any ramp, walkway, or pier shall be at least 1 foot above ground as measured from the lowest part of the structure. So that's why we wanted you to move the cross braces up. And now you've got the stairs going all the way down.
Well, all right, so you would envision the staircase sort of ending in midair, a foot above the flats? I'll try to find a picture.
I was envisioning that the lowest tread would be a foot above the ground, and that the two side pieces would obviously go to the ground. Tom,
All right, two new pilings to hold up the bottom of the staircase, and that's all right with me. Can you see the picture that's on the screen now?
Yep.
Yes.
Mhm.
yeah.
I mean, I don't think the base of the staircase is harming anything any more than the pilings are in the mud. It's just, but I know that's not my call.
So to attach the staircase, at the end of the staircase where it goes down, you would put in pilings?
Yes, and I don't see that that's any better environmentally or structurally than having the staircase sit on the flats, but I'm willing to do that.
Well, normally you would have something like a ramp and a float, and the float would sit in the mud.
Well, what's normal for this board is that you see engineers doing this and coming in with big barges and spending, huge amounts of money. And this is not the normal application. This is a homemade pier, and I sense that that's throwing everybody off, and I'm sorry about that. I don't want to float at the end of the pier. That should be a credit, that I don't want to have a float sitting there that I have to pull out, and I just want a little staircase.
No, what I'm getting at, Brad, is that we normally do look at floats sitting on the mud, but they float when the water comes in. You've got a structure that doesn't float when the water comes in, and if that doesn't give any more impact than a float, I think we can deal with it. It's just, you have to figure out why, normally there are floats there, and what if the staircase would have, and would it have any more impact than a float?
Well, all right, so if there were a float at the end of this pier, it would be sitting on the mud approximately 19 hours out of every day, okay? If you went down to look at the site, you can see that the tide is out most of the time, and there's just mud there, okay? So this staircase would sit on the mud, on the bottom of on the mud flats 24 hours a day instead of 19 hours a day. So
how do you secure it in the mud without pilings?
The bottom of the staircase?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I put two big boulders on the bottom of it. That's how I did it. Worked fine.
Okay. So it's basically weighted down.
Yes, but I'm happy to put two pilings in at the bottom of the staircase, which I would think would be environmentally worse than what I've proposed.
Sounds like the boulders are effectively pilings. They don't go down, and that the time average of the amount of mud that is being contacted is much reduced over what we would normally have with a float. So I for one think that it's not a bad solution.
Brad, what did you represent to the Army Corps? Because I see on the description of the Army Corps permit that it recognizes, the stairways there. So we don't have the benefit of the Army Corps application, but I do see that it's referenced, in their permit. So I'm just wondering what did you submit to them and to DEP for this, for this detail?
I submitted the same packet that I submitted to the town. Nothing different.
Okay.
And Brad, you said you're waiting on something from DEP. What is it that you're expecting back?
I need a permit from the DEP, and I've been in touch with them. This was months ago, and they asked me to supplement my submission, which I did, and they told me it would be I don't know what she said, 90 days or 120 days, and we're in that period of time. The Army Corps, to their great credit, got back to me one day after I filed my application and approved it.
So this isn't one of those permits where you send it in and if they don't object, it's automatically granted. You actually need an approval.
It's
Yeah.
not a permit by rule.
That's all I wanted to confirm. So any approval by us would be contingent on that approval being granted,
Correct.
obviously.
That's correct, yes. So one course of action that the board could pursue with this is they could, you all could, wait until the DEP permit has been written and approved and request a copy of that information, as well. I mean, that's one course of action.
Well, if we have if we have an ordinance that says that it has to be 1 foot above, could he request a waiver in this case because the staircase goes down into the water?
So the ordinance does not really have a waiver provision relative to performance standards. So it's not a submission waiver. I know that you have that authority within the within the subdivision regs. Those performance standards are things that are waivable. But I do think you have the ability to look at the situation and think about other circumstances that may be similar to this. For example, I mean, we do permits for stairs that go down to the water. I mean, that's not uncommon. That's not something that comes to the planning board. For instance, where you might have it, as part of a riprap feature, in a seawall. In terms of impact, I think, Brad alluded to this a little bit, that, from an impact perspective, there could be more pilings, associated with this project. And so, does the bottom of the stairs here, create, more of an impact than a typical pier would? I think that's something that you can think about and consider. Arguably arguably you could be looking at an application for something that's 100 feet in length, with a lot more pilings to it.
Yeah.
Well, if you give a permit for stairs down into the water for bathers and so forth, like in one of my houses, we had stairs that were rebuilt each year that went right down to the beach, into the water. Should that be part of this application even? Can you just give a permit for the stairs and say that we're replacing the pier and give them a permit for the stairs?
Well, I would say that I don't typically like to really parse out, bits and pieces of an application. I mean, I think this is a little bit of a unique, this is a little bit of a unique circumstance. And so I don't have any particular objection to that. I just, as a general rule, would rather not, be kind of parsing out, the bits and pieces, of a structure. But I do recognize that this is a little bit different. We have a structure that had some older components, there to it. Again, it's not something that you would typically build, but I don't see that, that the stairs are necessarily prohibited from being there. And,
I just noticed, was thinking here, that the 1 foot thing specifically asks about ramps, walkways, and piers. It does not ask about stairs. So given that these stairs are being planned, the fact that they are less than 1 foot necessarily conflict with land use ordinance.
Could have had more patience.
What?
These are all double burgers.
Stop, please mute.
Yes, thank you. I'm having trouble with my iPhone.
So basically, we could say the stairs are the equivalent of a float and they have less impact, so it's basically.
So we're
can
happy
be part
with
of
them.
the
Yeah, the
system.
square footage
Yes.
is way less than a float.
Yeah,
Right,
Yeah.
okay.
And,
Okay.
you know, and arguably in some other, you know, in some other peer,
Good, how are you? Good. So we'll have a.
in some other pier designs, you know, you have stairs on the other end, you know, on the landward side, you know, that, you know, that gets you up onto the pier. So,
And they don't have the 1 foot problem either, so,
right.
right,
right.
okay.
Okay. So the question is, I gave myself the job to do the finding of facts here. So we have, I think, we need like a letter from Brad saying the initial intention is to not, that any piers that need, any pilings, thank you. Any pilings that need to be replaced, that's that would be done separately with a permit as you were constructing.
Well, pilings will not be replaced unless as part of routine maintenance.
There you go.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think that's, you know, that's fine language to have.
So in that case, I think we can probably put together, I could probably put together a finding of facts that has some conditions that say that I think we've pretty well discussed.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, do I need a submission from him, or is it just that it'll be in the findings of facts that, and
everything's there. I think you could just write up what we decided in the findings of fact.
okay.
Yeah.
For some reason, I don't have those findings quite written yet. But for next time, I'll have findings, assuming that we need to reopen the public hearing and see if anybody is out there to discuss this. So why don't we reopen are there any raised hands? Okay, so I can officially close the public hearing, reopen it and close it, I guess. So I guess we pretty well have what we're changing. So I guess we need a motion to.
Before we do that,
I'll make a motion.
could you just please try to say what the conditions are that think we've agreed to? I know the 4 foot width, the DEP permit.
Yeah, so it's 4 foot
Maintenance only.
of L. Obviously conditional on DEP permit.
Yeah. Maintenance only on the existing piers.
Maintenance only on
What George
existing.
said.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, but I don't understand what that means about the pilings. If you're saying I can't replace them?
No, if you want to do
They won't
maintenance
be
on them
replaced.
and replace them, then do that. But
you need a permit to replace them. So you
Well,
have
code
to talk to
enforcement
code enforcement to get the permit.
Fine, okay?
Okay, so obviously conditions are 4 foot width for the L. The DEP,
Approval.
Werner, you said the DEP, when they approve these things, they would normally give the okay relative to inland fisheries and wildlife?
That's correct. Yes, for something like this,
Okay.
they'll typically reach out for comment to other departments.
Fine. That's sufficient, I think. So DEP, maintenance only.
The 12 inches of the cross
Yeah,
pieces, that was another one.
the bottom of the cross to 12 inches up.
Yeah.
I'm not going to word it quite that way in the permit, but that's all right. I think that's about it.
And could I just jump in there on that? When the reality of increasing the distance from the bottom of those cross members to the soil surface could be difficult, actually. So, well, when you, Mr. Lowe, when you go out there, you may want to think about notching the cross members and even the beam, so you kind of fit one into a notch in the other, so that you can raise the bottom of the cross member without raising the overall height of your walkway. Okay, now there's some limitations of how much you can notch, but that is a solution that comes to mind that would.
We're just asking him to raise the bottoms.
Just raise the bottom. I'm just saying you may want to end up thinking about notching, just as a
I think
suggestion.
Larry's trying to give them
I'm just trying to say.
an idea. I don't think that's the level of detail you want in the findings, though.
No, this is
You
just
don't
a
want to direct
suggestion.
that,
No, this is just a suggestion for,
how you could go about it.
yeah, how you could increase the distance without having a major redo of all your deck board elevations.
Yes, yeah.
That's all.
Okay.
Yeah, that's not a findings, that's just a suggestion.
All right. Well, I guess we can I'll put together our findings and share them with the board here before the next meeting.
So given those conditions, I would move to approve this application. Subject to those conditions.
I'll second that.
Okay. So let me go through the usual roll call. I'm in favor. Nina?
In favor?
Scott?
We lost him.
We lost him. Okay. Yeah, he was having problems with the thing. Ed? Yeah, Ed?
I'm in favor.
Larry?
In favor?
George? What the heck?
George is in favor.
Okay. I
Okay.
just get one of my alternates since, so.
Scott is coming back.
Brad, I hope you get your MDEP sometime soon and can go do this, because I know you're excited to go do it.
What happens now? Is there another hearing where we go through the findings of fact?
We read the findings of fact, but as far as, you don't need to actually be there, you just need to make sure they get filed with the Registry of Deeds.
All right.
Yeah, so process-wise, once we get through once the findings are read, Brad, we'll have a document that that'll get signed by the board members. It'll be available at the code office for you to come and pick up a copy of it. A copy of that will then have to be taken by you to the Registry of Deeds. It'll need to be recorded at the Registry of Deeds, and we'll need proof of recordation brought back to us. So whatever's contingent there, in particular the DEP permit, we still won't be able to issue you a building permit or the flood hazard permit until those conditions have been met. So in other words, we'll need that DEP permit as part of your building permit application.
Werner, if he were to come to you with a request for a permit to do some maintenance on the pilings, would you need the DEP permit?
Yes. Yep. I still need a DEP.
That.
Yeah, I still need a DEP permit. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Well, Brad.
All right. Well, thank you.
You don't have to see us again, I hope. we'll just get that thing squared away.
All right, I appreciate your careful consideration and concerns. Thank you very much for the approval.
Okay.
Contingent approval.
Approval, yes.
Yeah.
One more step. That was good. Okay. Good luck.
All right, thank you. Thank
Thank
you
you.
all.
Thank you.
All right. So that is the end of that item number 3. And item number 4, Ocean Woods Sebago Techniques authorized agent, the site plan review. This is continuation of the initial review. So I would like to get Steve Doe and probably a few other people online.
Ralph Austin.
Ralph Austin. And if there are others, they can tell you who else.
There we go.
Brian Nipp is out there. He's the architect. Unless the board has questions for him, I guess bring him forward and then he's available if the board has questions. So at the last meeting, we presented the project and the board asked for essentially Ralph to provide a memo to the board, and he submitted a memo through the codes office, and I believe the board has received that.
Yes.
It was just discussed over 4 items. I guess if you have any questions, Ralph's available to discuss them. Other than that, I really don't have anything else to present at this time.
Okay. I was looking at the comparison that is in your resubmission, the old to new. Wondered how many beds, and you can't tell from the as-built drawings how many beds were in the rooms, how many bedrooms there were there multi-room suites, or there just 32 rooms? What was the existing right now?
As far as beds, that I don't know. I think there was
bedrooms.
It's based on bedrooms, yeah.
And how many bedrooms were there?
I think I have that in a document. So.
I think there was 49.
That's the new one.
No, I think we're actually less than that. I think well, I'll let Brian address it because I know he looked into that. I believe we're slightly less than what was existing.
All I saw was 32. So
That's units.
Yeah, there's 32 units. There's that apartment as well. I think so. That's like technically 33. And then as far as beds, I believe there's 49.
Yeah.
okay, because all the picture showed was one each, which I'm sure it wasn't the case, but it is all that you showed in your.
Yep.
You're saying that the number of beds has gone down.
Correct.
Okay, so that's really not documented in the Barrett made stuff.
I think it was. Let me see if I can put my hand.
Yeah, I didn't do a comparison of the original submission to what we're submitted now. But yes, the bed count did go down. I believe we had maybe 47 beds prior to this review, and now we have 43.
Yep.
Okay. So the next.
I'm sorry, Tom, you asked a question. I haven't heard the answer. How many were there before?
49.
no, today, if I don't tear that building down.
49.
Correct.
49 in
Yep.
condominium, the inn at Ocean Woods. The inn at Goose Rock said 49. Thank you.
Okay. So those were just basically 2 beds in a room, or they were actually suites? I mean, it really, not that it probably matters. But
Can I just clarify, are we talking beds or bedrooms? Because I think the ordinance looks at bedrooms, not how many beds are in a room.
yes, so how many bedrooms were there?
There are 32. So there's 2 things at play that we're looking at. So 32 was the driving number for the number of cottages that we could have. So we're less than that because we have 30. And then we also looked at the bed count, so we were below that. So the existing building has 49 beds. So that was a threshold we made sure we were under. So we supplied 43.
Okay, but they did not have 49 bedrooms. Now you have 43
Correct.
bedrooms.
No,
No, we have 43 beds in 30 units.
Units, but the units have rooms. There is a separate bedroom for I mean, it's like a bunk room or something in the, so there in fact are 43 bedrooms.
Ralph, is that the point you were making, is that we should be looking at bedrooms before and bedrooms now?
I guess I need clarification from Steve or Brian on what they're counting.
So we were tallying bed totals and unit totals based on what our research said, sort of would define that threshold, the design threshold for the existing building and the new proposed.
Yeah, I may have misspoken then. It's looking at beds, which would accommodate a certain number of guests if you have 2 beds versus 1 bed.
Because I know the,
When we will look at parking, for example, we're going to say so many parking spots per room. Isn't that a bedroom typically in a hotel?
I guess Warner would answer that.
Yeah, that's correct. You would typically look at, I'll pull up the chart where it speaks to that in the ordinance. But yes, so off the top of my head, I believe that's referred to as the number of rooms is what would dictate that. But
Yes.
I'll confirm that.
Yeah, it's 1 space per bed.
Yeah, what we've done is we've taken, so the existing building has, multiple suites, so it's multiple beds, more than 1 bed, and we've kind of rolled that into this new design, which essentially a 2-bedroom cottage is a suite, is the way that we were looking at it in terms of bed count, floor area, and sort of all those other determinations that sort of make up the thresholds that we were working within.
okay. I have one more question, at least.
Yep. So just to clarify here, so when you're looking at your parking standard there, it says hotels, motels, and inns. It identifies it as 1 space per sleeping room.
Bedroom.
Okay, so a sleeping room may have one or two beds in it.
Right,
No,
they're not quibbling about that. So it would be helpful to us.
A unit may have one or more sleeping rooms.
Correct. So it'd be nice to know what we were going from and what we're going to in terms of sleeping rooms or bedrooms colloquially.
Yeah, correct. I mean, arguably, you could be looking at, a typical hotel room that, that may have two beds in it. And again, the ordinance specifically, identifies it as sleeping rooms. So I think that's a board interpretation on, does a cottage translate into, what is that? Is that considered a sleeping, for purposes of parking, or even for purposes of trying to compare, the unit numbers from the current existing building to the proposal? What is, is it a 1-for-1, or what is it? I think that's a question that the board, will need to interpret.
And that may be different for the different flavors of cottages, right? If you've gone in, I'm not worried that you don't have enough parking here. If you've basically used the number of beds, that's going to be a larger number. But laying this out and saying this is a satisfactory solution, and that it's not larger in any way, it'd be nice to be able to do apples to apples, and in the language that the ordinance recognizes. I think you have all the data.
We just need to clarify it for the board.
Yep.
Yes.
Yes,
So
please.
we that's a piece of information we need, is how many sleeping rooms were in the old inn. I think we know the new number is 43.
No, I don't think we do. I think that's the number of beds.
That's the number of beds, yeah.
We don't know how many sleeping rooms are in. Well,
There has a bunk room. It shows.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Brian, but that is number of sleeping rooms, 43.
Oh,
I believe. I could be wrong.
I don't want to misspeak. I haven't, I'd have to count.
okay. So why don't we just take that as an action then, rather than trying to
Yeah.
solve it real time. But
Clarify would be great. Yeah.
it'd be
Okay.
nice to be able to answer all of those questions, but
Yeah.
roll it up into the number of sleeping rooms.
Okay.
Yeah.
Next question. How many rooms have a wet bar? Because we have the 1989 ZBOA allowed to have wet bars, but the ZBOA specifically precluded outlets and plugs capable of providing electricity for stoves, hot plates, microwaves, etc. So you've got kitchenettes now.
Yeah,
It's like a huge change.
Yeah, the kitchenette label is probably misleading. I think the only thing that we're providing is a sink. There's no intent for any cooking service in these in the cottages. So it's just a sink.
It's a wet bar then.
Correct.
In terms of the definition from the 1989 Zoning Board of Appeals. So you have to be sure when you build these little things that they still conform with that in terms of electrical outlets.
Okay, so you're saying no electrical outlets at?
In the kitchenette, kitchenette can have a fridge and it's a wet bar. It can have a fridge and a sink.
Yep.
The zoning board, when it authorized the termination of the condominium form of ownership, also terminated those restrictions. And I think Warner can, because I don't even think in the ordinance now that has changed in the ordinance from back in those days as well.
Yeah, I'd have to do some research as far as the timing of when that ordinance amendment was done. But I believe that, the addition of the allowance of kitchenettes was an amendment that was made at some point. I can look into that for the board and report back to you all on that. And I suspect that amendment was done to deal with the question of what to do with, hotel, motel proposals that had kitchenettes. I suspect this same discussion, was probably had in the, in the late 80s, as far as what was it. With my understanding, the biggest, the purpose behind that was to ensure that these units did not become dwelling units, even though they had, a kitchenette or some type of, minor cooking facility in it. The primary goal was, just because you had that it did not in any way, shape, or form become a dwelling unit.
Otherwise, we'd be looking at the subdivision regs.
Right.
Right.
That's not what this is.
No.
Right.
But we also should clarify for the board exactly what will be in the units.
Thank you.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Right, in keeping in mind that intent.
Yes.
Yeah, and yes, right. Okay.
I like that.
So I have just I'm confused. When the Zoning Board of Appeals negated items 1 and 3 in the original approvals, what did that do to the non-conforming use? Did that just modify and say, then it's now a non-conforming use where you can have wet bars?
Like,
Or did,
bars were allowed, they did not want cooking facilities.
I understand?
And so the question before the board, and that's why we need to clarify exactly what will be in the units. Minor changes, you don't lose your non-conforming status. Significant changes, you potentially could. So as I see it, we need to clarify what we want and then explain why that should be allowed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, now, we just got the Acorn comments. I'm sure you'll be reading through them, Steve, and providing us commentary back or negotiating with them.
Yeah, I did review those. A lot of them pertain to items that we've included in our DEP submission. So, but we will, do a line-by-line response back to them. So we'll be working on that.
Thank you.
Did you get a copy of the stormwater report that Acorn got, the same, level of detail? So if I got it, I've misplaced mine.
Well,
when you read the Acorn comments, it talks about
yeah,
I didn't know about.
Was that not in the original submission?
It was, the only thing I included in the original submission was the narrative.
Yeah.
A lot of, Larry would like the stormwater report, but I don't know if a lot of you other board members would read that.
I'd like access to it, Steve. I don't want to have to mail it to everybody, but
yeah,
it's just online.
I think it is online. I think I did give it to Werner.
Okay.
I would guess I would ask if it's been posted, but it is available.
If it is, then I didn't look for it, so that'd be great.
Okay.
And
okay,
when it was my turn, I had a question that came up because of when I read this. I thought, oh, I didn't see that. So that'd be great.
Yeah, the full stormwater report is on the website.
Oh, that's good enough for me. That's great.
Yeah.
Enjoy it.
Oh, thanks.
Okay. I'm gonna read it.
I'll read your comments when
Okay.
All 65 pages of it.
yeah, let me go through the board. I'm done with my stuff. Nina?
I don't know how to phrase some questions. I don't have a problem with the non-conforming use at this point. going from condominiums and so forth. I appreciate the memo you wrote, Ralph. There were some questions raised by some of the abutters. One about easements. I'd like to see where those easements are and what they do. There may be some restrictions required. The other was about the golf carts and the use of golf carts. One, parking the golf carts, which I'm assuming that if somebody isn't using a golf cart, it's going to be parked at the cottage or unit or whatever. But if you're starting out and you're getting a golf cart, where are you going to keep them? Are you going to bring them up from the unit? That sort of thing. The other thing, I'm really on to the road, and I think that's very dangerous around Goose Rocks. Anytime you've got golf carts and cars on the road, you have a potential for problems. So I would be in favor of some written restrictions there. But, you know, there are questions raised by some of the abutters, and that is my most concern. The other concern I have that you just raised in there is having any kind of burners or heating elements in the units themselves because of the danger of fire. People aren't always careful. Sometimes they leave them on. I think you ought to consider that very carefully. I think if they're going to have any cooking, it should be done at the restaurant and pick up food there. I don't know what happens at other inns, and I don't know if it's or not. It's something to consider. So, you know, the stormwater report, I want to see the answers to. Acorn raised some questions in there that I'm concerned with. So mostly it's what the abutters have been raising questions for, the access on Dyke Road, the easements. I'd like to see you bring that up and take a look at that and how it's going to be handled.
Yeah, on the easement that runs to the abutting property, we have to maintain that. And certainly, Steve, we can put notations on the plan and also signs on the property. There's no parking within that easement.
Yeah, and if I could clarify, I did look at what we did. That easement comes up, that's what I'm calling the service drive now, and then it goes right to the abutting property. I do show pavement up against the property line, but it's not designated as a parking space. And so I think what I'm going to do is actually just not even pave that location. And we do have a dumpster in that location, which is out of the easement. It's actually slightly in the easement, so I'm going to have to move that out of the easement. But they will have clear vehicle access to that property without having any parked cars in that. So.
Well, if that's the entrance to the, I don't remember the map, if that's the entrance to the property, and your people who are checking in are coming in on that same road, then
That's the service
there
road.
are enough of them. You may have a problem with them just stopping.
That's the service drive, so
That's the service road. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not the main
I didn't
entrance.
remember the map there. I don't have it in front of me.
yeah.
Steve, would you maybe, or somebody, would you all maybe be able to share your screen with with the site plan? That way.
Yep. If I can share my screen, I can show you that. All right. Looks like I'm able to do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. So let me zoom in to this plan.
And that raises another question for me, because we have a problem all
Can you see the plan?
Yes.
Okay. So the easement it comes up here. It's these bold lines here. So the access easement comes here, and then it comes up here to the abutting lot. I have the dumpster right here. It's in the corner, so I'm gonna have to kick that
Yes.
out. This is not a parking space. I'm not counting it as a parking space, but understanding somebody could park there, so we just we'll take that pavement out of that area. So it'll just be, you know, lawn or grass or something like that. And we can put signs in here as well.
Yeah,
We'll-
signage would be good.
Yeah, and we'll sign this down here as service drive only, no, you know, no guest or something like that. The other easement, Nina, I'll just kind of zoom out a little bit further, is it's right here.
Are you going to have landscapers in there because they're notorious for ignoring no parking signs?
No, they shouldn't be. I mean, this is a service. You need to have this area clear. I don't see any parking in this area because that's an access in and out. The other easement is right here. This is a 50-foot easement right here. As noted in the letter, that does not continue down in this area.
So how do you keep people from driving into that area?
Into this area? There is no means to drive into there. There is no means to drive there. This is all wooded. I'll kind of zoom in a little bit more. Currently, if you see this line right here and over here, there's some encroachments from the original property. In other words, their parking is right here. The existing lot parks in that, and there's a little bit over here. We're going to remove all that so that all the parking actually happens on our property. There'll be no parking on this here. And there's some existing light poles that are located in here. We're going to move those out and get them right up against the parking lot.
Steve, was the driving need for that easement the previous septic?
Yeah, if I could, Steve, there were purposes to it, Ed. One was if needed for the septic system, you know, berm or fill or whatever. The other was to provide a landscape buffer.
Okay, all right,
if needed for any approvals.
all right,
And the septic part obviously goes away
right.
when we hook up to town sewer.
Thank you.
So Nina, are you finished?
Well, I have questions about the golf carts. You have to decide what you're going to do about them, but yeah, I can finish up here.
Well, I can talk about the golf carts. I talked to Justin Grimes, and he says the way they're going to operate when you arrive, when guests arrive, they will park their car in the parking lot, and staff will take them by a golf cart to their cottage, and their golf cart will be at the cottage. I still have a logistics on, let's say they're going to go somewhere, they're going to go in town, so they take their golf cart to their car. That's a logistics on, you know, where do the golf carts go? I was looking at the plan. We have a space right over here that maybe I make a limited parking area for golf carts. So you could drive up, park your golf cart here, and get your car, and then, you know, if this place gets filled up, staff could take the cart back to your cottage. So, but there is a logistics that we need to work through on that.
Okay, so if somebody else had questions, go
Okay.
ahead.
Ed, why don't you go ahead?
I have two things. One, Steve, you've already alluded, I think, to the fact that you've looked at the Emmons email. Which
Yes.
was very, very thoughtful, I thought.
Yep.
and explicit. In the past, on other applications, this type of letter, you've been able to answer with maybe with redlining or a response. Do you think that might be worth it in this case?
Absolutely. Yep. I think,
Because otherwise it's just going to come up verbally during the public hearing.
yeah, no, I'll address those comments. He had a lot about the easements.
Yeah.
The other one was a drainage, and I can actually talk about it now.
Okay.
We have a drainage pipe right here. This is pervious pavers, and we have a drainage pipe that comes down and it outlets over here.
All right.
And that his concern was that we're dumping water onto his land.
Sure.
Which we're dumping it onto our land, but it does flow, and then it actually comes back onto our land. So I think we're going to look at that based on his concern. We'll look at rerouting this pipe. We may bring it and connect it right over here. So we actually just bring it and connect into this system and get into here, or we may outlet it like over here. But we're looking at that. And I think that was an Acorn comment as well.
Yes, it was.
It was.
So, yep.
Definitely.
But yeah, we've already started to put together responses to some of the questions and comments that the Emmons has had.
I appreciate
so
that.
Steve
I
can
just-
provide that.
I just didn't want to leave it to chance, so I asked.
Yep.
Again, I think some letters they just set themselves up to be addressed that way, and I
Correct.
think this is one of them.
Yep.
The other question I had came out of made me realize when I read the Acorn report that I didn't really understand where the shoreland zone was on this property. And the Acorn asserts that a shoreland zone within 75 feet of an unnamed stream tributary of the Goose Rocks Creek. And that surprised me. I didn't really understand that we had shoreland zone there. I didn't think that met the definition of a stream that shoreland zone was associated with. Can you help me on a site plan, show me where you think the shoreland zone is and isn't, and where are we building on it?
So the 75, so when you go to the shoreland zone, this line here is the shoreland zone from the title area. So this whole front of the lot is shoreland zone.
That's very clear on the Kennebunkport zoning maps.
Yep. And then there's another one over here.
Yep, I got that one.
Okay, so then we got the stream, and now the DEP has a 75-foot setback from streams.
Yes.
So there's a 75-foot setback from this stream, which is this dash line right here. So all the cottages are beyond 75 feet from the stream. We have some disturbances right here. This is some grading within that 75 feet.
Yep.
And we've, in our DEP application, we have applied as part of our application to do that disturbance within the 75 feet. And DEP has provisions where they will allow you to do that. They will allow you to go up to 25 feet. So that's, I believe, is what he's referring to.
Well, maybe my question is for Werner then, because if I can quote him, he says, the land use ordinance section 1.4 states that the shoreland provisions of our ordinance apply to all land areas within 75 feet of the normal high water mark of a stream. And he goes on to say this is such a stream. But I didn't think this met the definition of stream in our land use ordinance.
Let me get to,
Section 1.4.
yeah, let me get to that section. I'll take a look at it.
Obviously, the definition section as well is just, I thought that this was major streams, like one's coming, like as it says, from a great pond, or talks about the joining of two, I forget the name, two other streams.
Correct, yep,
It
at
looked
the,
like an area that we had some
confluence of two perennials, yep, is what you're looking at. So
And I didn't really understand what that meant, so.
Yep.
Sorry.
Yeah, no worries there. So, all right. Of course, stream takes me to a different definition.
And I'm not saying that we don't have restrictions within 75 feet of that. I just questioned whether we called that shoreland zone.
Sure. So the definition of stream gets into that free-flowing body of water from the outlet of a great pond, which we don't have in town. But again, keep in mind, this is a DEP definition, that would have come through shoreland zoning.
Oh, yeah.
It says, or the confluence of two perennials as depicted on the most recent edition of a USGS map.
I looked at that. It didn't look like that applied.
Yep, where the body of water becomes a river or flows to another body of water or wetland within the shoreland zone area, right? So whenever we look at, what we have in terms of shoreland zoning maps, we're looking for those, we're primarily looking for those blue line streams, that show up on that, on that USGS map.
Right. I'm not sure it changes what the answer that Steve just gave me is or should be, but I just think we need to be on the same page,
right,
with our engineering firm as to this rather intricate definition and what we call shoreland zone and what we just call wetlands buffer.
And so when I look at I'm looking, what I'm looking at right now, and I can do a share of this. Got too many buttons. Okay. All right, so what you're looking at here is, this is coming from the town's GIS maps, okay? And so there's, so I believe this is, that, representative, that representative, blue line.
Yep.
Here's the other representative, Goose Rock's Creek, that comes here. But keep in mind, it comes into this area here, which is all, which is tidal to begin with. This is, you have, coastal wetland that's within this area, which would have a 250. So I think what we're hearing is this, interpretation that this may be, subject to maybe subject to stream protection, which would be a 75. But the proposal that we're looking at here, so that's 75, so think of, there's two different zones that you typically have, right? You have a shoreland, which is 250, and then you have, a stream protection, which is 75.
Right.
And so, the 75, doesn't preclude, it doesn't prohibit any, the earth disturbance activity, but it does act as a building setback. So for purposes of this, this here, and this would be consistent with, with DEP's application, we'd be interested in seeing, and likely seeing a 75, off of here. Now, I don't know, and this is, I guess this is a bigger question as to whether or not any of this, is, is salt tolerant that comes up in through here.
It's not. It ends, and we show it on our survey. It's essentially where the, I can't remember if it just comes into the property or, near where you have it as white. But,
yeah,
and that's where the 250 is measured from on our back part of our lot.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'll stop share here, and I don't know, Steve, if you want to pull yours back up.
Yeah.
To show that location.
Yeah, I don't think I have my boundary survey, but this line here is measured from the tidal area. Unfortunately, I don't have the survey in my drawing set here. But that's where that line is.
All right. Well, you answered my question. I like the language, Werner, that you just used, the stream protection, it confuses me, and I think it may confuse others if in the Acorn documents we're saying that is a shoreland zone within 75 feet of that, because that's not the language we've used historically at this board.
Let's just review. We can review the definition of shoreland zone, just to. Yeah, so here, it talks about, we've talked about the land area located within 250 feet. Now the piece that we're dealing with here, it says, or within 75 feet horizontal distance of the normal high water line of a stream. So, this is one of those where you have to kind of chase the definitions, then you have to ask, okay, well, what is a stream? And then you go back to,
That's right.
You go back to what your stream definition has, that confluence,
Right.
below two perennials.
To me, I read major stream basically at that point. And where this is, I didn't think that, but I thought that there are restrictions that come within 75 feet of this minor stream, what I'm calling a minor stream. I know I'm using loose language when I'm being critical of language. I apologize for that. I think we want to come up with language for saying, like, for example, I don't want to say that all of the shoreland zone restrictions against earth moving, for example, apply if in fact, I don't want to say they do apply if in fact they don't. If we can't go build in that area, then that's what I want to say. What's the difference between the area that you use the words require stream protection, a stream protection area, as opposed to what we would do in the normal 250-foot shoreland zone protected area? And
Well, I
if,
think
if there's a difference, I don't want to use the same word for those zones.
Yeah, no, that's understood. So, I can tell you that, on the town shoreline zoning map, this particular stream doesn't get called out, doesn't get identified, in that fashion. But I do think the bigger question is, regarding earth moving, activity within this area, is how much of this area constitutes a floodplain area. I think that's the, if I'm asking a question of a more restrictive standard that I'm going to address in that area, it's going to be, the designation of this, as a floodplain area, which I believe in one of Steve's drawing, he has that line identified.
Well, we have the current flood line, which
Yep.
is like off the page here. The new map that you provided me, Werner, early on is
Yep.
elevation 10,
Correct.
which
Yep.
is right here.
Okay.
Yep.
And so it's like, essentially, this is the 10 on the other side of the stream. So we're out of that zone.
Yep.
What would be the floodplain zone. We get into it with the outlet here, but all the site work is outside of that floodway or flood zone.
I think you're going to get into more detail on this in answering Acorn's
Yes.
questions, but I wanted to bring this particular one up because it confused me, and I think the language is a bit confusing.
Okay.
So thanks for the help, both Werner and Steve, both.
So, that it?
That's all I had. Thank you, Tom.
Okay, Larry?
Well, my questions have been discussed already. I just look forward to seeing the responses to the stormwater audit by Acorn. And
Okay.
but I must. I think I'm also have to reinforce Nina's concern about fire prevention in any one of the individual cabins if there's some sort of
Yeah,
cooking
but they're
facility or
going to tell
anything.
us what's in there.
Yeah. So yeah. Anyway, so yeah, my questions have been discussed. Thank you.
Okay, and Scott, if you're still there, do you have any questions? Okay, George,
No, I do not.
John,
Mine have all been answered, thanks.
okay. So good, I think we've got a lot of new answers that are going to come. Now, the question at this point is are we ready to declare the initial review complete so that we can start our public hearing process next time?
I would move that this application is complete, subject to, before we have the next meeting, we have the answers to these questions vis-a-vis bedrooms and the number of beds and the like. And
Yes.
that you come prepared to talk to the Acorn concerns.
Yeah, I won't have I just know timing wise, I won't have a full response to Acorns by then.
Okay. I think that's fair.
Okay.
So, also at our, at the last meeting where we discussed this, I did bring up the possibility of, if the board wanted to have town council review, any of the documentation that Ralph had brought forward, as well as anything else relative to the application, if there was any more questions regarding, non-conforming uses or things of that nature that the board wanted to have looked at by council.
I don't have a problem with it. I think any legal questions have been answered, but I know that the abutters have brought up some questions of fact, and I think those facts will be raised probably at the public hearing, and that's something for us to decide.
So reserve the right after the public meeting or during the public meeting of asking for the help from council, but right now, maybe not.
If a legal question arises,
Obviously.
if it's something that we have to determine as fact, like has it been a year since anybody's been there and so forth and so on, then I think that's something we should answer.
I agree. We don't need help from council on that.
Okay, well, does someone second Ed's motion at this point?
I'll second it.
Okay, well, I'm in favor. Nina?
I'm in favor.
Scott?
Thank you, Joe.
Scott, okay. Ed?
Yes, I'm in favor.
Larry?
In favor.
And John?
In favor.
Okay.
I would like to comment that I'd like to see some of these questions answered long before our next meeting so that the board has a chance to chew on them a little bit, because sometimes these things come in the day before and I have so many things to do that I can't get to them.
Understood, and we agree with that. So.
He's already said he won't be fully answering Acorn, but the other questions.
Yep.
The other questions, yes.
Okay.
And a reminder that there's a site walk next week.
Yeah, there's a site walk next week.
Yeah.
And that's a time to walk around the site, not necessarily to ask questions, however. So, okay, very good.
Do we want to just, just talk just briefly about kind of rules of the site walk? Just so folks understand, what that wants to look like.
Yeah, if folks are watching, the site walk is a public
Meeting.
It's a public meeting. Members of the planning board will be there. Werner will presumably be there, as will representatives of Sebago, and Steve and Ralph will be there. But basically, the idea is we look around, we walk around the property, we look at everything. We can ask questions if we just notice them quickly, but it's generally not a question and answer, and it certainly isn't a chance for the public to corner any members of the planning board and start talking about the project. So I guess that's the main rule, is that we're all interested in finding about more details from walking around the property. So.
But the public is invited, but they
Absolutely.
can't start a discussion.
That's correct. So.
Will we have access to the interior of the?
We had not planned on it. If you do want to get in, I'll have to make sure somebody is there to let us in.
I was only thinking of the questions that are going to come up. I know that you've answered what the previous owner said in terms of what the restaurant, where it was located and what it looked like. It'd be nice to be able to envision that, that's all.
Okay. I'll get a hold of them and make sure that they can get that open.
Maybe we can look through the windows. I don't know.
You can do that.
A couple of rooms if
I
possible.
literally don't know.
Yeah. I just hate to have everybody trampling through the whole, if we got
No.
a good turnout from the public, everybody
No,
trampling through.
and that might be dangerous too.
Yes,
So let's not-
exactly.
Right, I'd just like to have a way to, maybe we do it with a photo if we can't do it safely.
Well, we can look inside the windows.
That'll do.
If the board wants to get inside, I can, everything is viewed. You can view the restaurant from the outside.
Excellent.
Okay.
All right. Good. All right. Well, in that case, we'll see you next time. And it's time to bring on item 5, 201.
You're gonna appoint a case manager?
Oh, yeah. I got to appoint a case manager. I have 2 volunteers so far.
Okay.
And I'll let Ed, you got it.
Okay.
Okay. So
Thank you.
Ed
Have a good
Francis.
evening.
Yes, and I assume, are you around for this next piece, Ralph?
Yes, I am.
I thought maybe. Okay, so Bill Walsh and whoever else he wants to bring in are here for the Boughton Hotel Corporation doing business as Colony Hotel, Walsh Engineering, and this is the North Campus. We're basically, we've seen it before, but this is a big revised application, so we're calling this a new initial review. So there's Bill Walsh, and there's Mr. Martin and Mr. Austin. Okay. So I guess, Bill, you can start.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you said, Bill Walsh from Walsh Engineering. I'm here with John Martin he's the managing partner of the Colony for Boughton Hotels. If you could promote Rob Harbison and Michael Murphy, that would be appreciated. They are the architects on the project as well. And Ralph Austin is here with us also. And I trust you all can hear me fine.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So as you said, we were here originally last fall, and we were back in January and once in May. But I think we're making sort of our final push through on the North Campus. That's what this project is you had before you. And we're going to do a kind of a tag team here on the presentation. John Martin is going to start. He's going to turn it back over to me, and then Rob Harbison from Market Square Architects will pick up, and then John and I will wrap it up at the end and get back to you guys for any questions. So with that, John, I'm going to turn it over for you for a quick intro and kind of where we are with the project and parking counts.
Great. All right, Bill, thank you very much. Again, John Martin from the managing partner from the Colony Hotel in Kennebunkport, obviously Maine. During the past year or so, we've been working with you guys. We have brought some players on board. I just want to make sure that they've all been identified. Obviously, Bill Walsh Engineering has been a joy to work with. Ralph Austin, who's on the call also, is working with us on legal. But I do want to bring up Ryan who is working with us as the building contractor, who helped us bring Market Square on board. And I think we do have Rob and Mike on pulled in now, and they'll present in a little while. So we've got what I think is a really strong team. We've been making quite a bit of headway on the project. And to remind the board, we did have a request from the board to go in front of the selectmen to talk about the potential of making modifications to Colony Ave, most specifically the sidewalk. So we have done that. We actually had to do it twice, but that's okay. We made some adjustments from their feedback, and we have been given permission. Oh, here we go. Here we go. Thanks, Bill. So we initially applied for the right-of-way submission to include some lighting and some parking spots in the right-of-way. After our first review, we did back off a little bit on that, and we actually took the lighting out on the advisement of the town. We also backed off some of the parking spots and removed them from the right-of-way. We are still, and we did get authorization to put in a sidewalk for pedestrian traffic, and also put some columns that, there you go, Bill's showing you now, that reproduce the existing columns on both sides of the entrances. So we're excited that that got put through. I believe, Warner, you can comment, we did get that documentation to you. I don't know that it got all the way to the entire planning board, but I think you do have what you need there to sort of have the presentation or know that we do have permission to do that. So I don't know if we want to do questions as we go along, or Bill, do you want me to keep moving and we'll go on from there? Great. So then after the sidewalks and we should probably talk about the parking count. You want to do that, Bill, now? Pull that up. So we wanted to remind the board that we originally applied for much larger key count or room count than what we landed on. It was recommended to us that we apply for the maximum number of rooms we could get on the property. We have now, after working with Market Square, determined that a reasonable number of rooms is going to be 47. 41 of those will be, thank you very much, Bill, you're doing great. 41 of those will be contained in buildings 1A, B, and C. And then the balance of those rooms, 6 rooms, will be above the market. And so we have a total key count or total room count of 47. Perfect down there. We're going to propose, or we're proposing 44 seats in the restaurant. So that would require then an additional 15 parking spots over on the right. So per the town ordinance, we are offering, oh, and I wanted to remind you also that we did add the employees back in. We had them not in the first application because we were going to have employees park on the south campus and come over, but we do know that we need employees. Obviously for the market, we wanted to include them in the parking count because we did have also excess parking. So if you go all the way over to the right-hand side where Bill was just highlighting, it shows you your required parking. For instance, 41 rooms or 41 keys requires 41 parking spots. 6 employees require 3 parking spots. 6 keys in building 2 or 6 rooms requires 6 parking spots. And then the seating of 44 people in that building require 15 parking spots to a total of 65. Now over on the right-hand side, you see what we've provided. Obviously, we're providing what's needed, but then down towards the bottom, we have excess parking right there of 13 of paved and 22 of grass. So we are in excess of the parking demand of 35 at this moment in time, now that we have hard numbers. Bill, what else do we have there? Perfect. That's great.
Good. Yep.
All right. So I don't know if anyone wants to review the parking plan at this moment in time or have any specific parking questions. I'm happy to answer. Does anyone at this moment in time have questions about the parking? Wow, you guys are easy. Okay, good. And then if you wanted
Wait a minute, I have a quick question about it. How many ADA spots do you have?
They're actually included in this count, but they're going to be located. Bill, do you have that drawing? Because they're going to be located near the entrances to both. Oh, perfect. Good. Yeah, right there. If you zoom in just a little bit, Bill. So, Nina, to answer your question, let's start with building 2, if you don't mind, Bill. We are having 1 ADA room specifically in building 2. we're going to provide ADA parking spots in that upper parking lot that Bill's showing you now to go into building number 2, and then also in the lower parking lot to go into the market below. So that would satisfy the building 2 ADA parkings, and then we have an additional 3 located towards the entrances. And the reason why, Nina, we push those up towards the middle of building 1A is because the elevator bank that services B and C is located in 1A. We thought that was a convenient place for people who needed access into the main building who might be staying on the second floor. But all our ADA rooms currently are on the first floor. We still thought that there might be some needs, someone maybe with not full accessibility issues, but we run into this at the Colony quite often with someone who might have, let's say, a walker. They don't necessarily need the elevator, but they may be on the second floor. They may not need an ADA room, but they may be on the second floor.
Is there a state requirement for a particular number of ADA rooms when you have a certain number of hotel rooms?
I couldn't comment on that. I don't know if someone else wants to chime in on that. There isn't a...
Yeah, I can jump in on that real quick.
Hey,
this is
Rob
Harbison from Market Square Architects. So yes, there's both federal and state requirements, and it's based on it's a percentage of the total number of rooms. And so there are a number, and then the other requirement is that they be equally dispersed. And so we try to get rooms of every different room type and also in each location. So that way no one's excluded from a particular view or floor or experience. And then similarly for parking, there's a requirement based on total number of spaces for that, which Bill has addressed as well.
Okay, so you're sure you have the right number of ADA spaces?
Yes.
You have an ADA space, you said, down in not in front of the restaurant, the grab and go, but on the other side in the other parking lot is an ADA space for building 2.
Yes.
But it looks like there are stairs going down to building 2. How do they get from that particular space down to the building 2?
No, that's a great question. So and you bring up a good point, Nina, that there is no, let's just call it communication from the second floor to the first floor, meaning there would be no elevator or stair inside the building. So if I was going to leave, whether I'm using an ADA access or whether I'm walking, oh, perfect. Thank you very much, whoever's running this bill, I think. So if I was going to go from the upper parking lot, which is on the lodging level of building 2, and I wanted to go down to the lower level, if I wanted to walk, I would go right there and walk on the stairs straight down, or we're actually making this pathway an ADA compliant graded pathway for them to get down to the lower level of building 2.
If they need that pathway and they're gonna stay on the upper level of building 2, how do they get to the upper level?
You mean if they want to go from building 2 from the first floor to the ground floor, or for the lodging floor to the market?
From the ground floor, the first floor, whatever it is, to the next floor up.
So Nina, this level is what we'll call the ground floor here.
Okay.
And this entrance over here is at the second level. So there is actually an entrance right there, if you can see.
Oh, okay. All right. I wasn't sure.
Yep.
It looked like they had to take a long
It's a
thing
long
around there.
Long leap.
Yeah. No, I was just going to suggest if you had your building elevations handy,
Yep.
That may be helpful. The street view of building 2.
I'm gonna have to switch here. Hold on 1 second. Just have to share.
And while he's doing that, I can just say, so the parking lot at the street level at the marketplace, that parking lot is specifically for the lower level, which only has access to the marketplace. The upper parking lot has access to that second floor, which is only rooms. And so the room floor does not connect or communicate internally to the marketplace floor in any way. So the upper parking lot services the guest rooms above, and the lower parking lot services the marketplace at the street level.
So if somebody checks in, where do they check in, and how do you communicate to them they shouldn't use the parking space if they're ADA on the lower level?
Well, Nina, it would be very much like they check in now. So currently, all guests, regardless of where they're staying on our property, check in the main building. So they might be currently staying in the east house of the Gowan House, where we give a map and directions as to how they want to move and park. And so we would give them direction if they're staying in building 2 to park in the lot that's dedicated to the lodging portion of building 2.
Okay.
So which would be this one right here?
Yep, exactly, Bill. Good job. Thanks.
Okay. You can go on.
Okay.
So Bill, what's next on our checklist? I think the site sort of, you want to go through some of the changes or?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes,
great.
let me get back to that. Hold on one second.
So could I just jump in for a second on the building too?
Sure.
So you're gonna have accommodation above the marketplace. So, you know, I think the question that comes to my mind based on prior experience is, you're gonna need some serious soundproofing between the two, I think.
We agree 100%, Larry.
Okay, so, and I don't think it's gonna be so easy to achieve. Anyway, I'm just glad you're aware of it, so thank you.
Oh yeah, believe me, we got these guys at Market Square. We're working on it. We have a weekly meeting, and that has been brought up several times.
Okay, great, thank you.
Sure.
Just before you leave that, so you made me understand that the only entrance and egress from building 2 second floor is at that one end of the building.
Well,
That's the only entry, not the only egress. So there is an enclosed egress there because we actually meet the travel distance. We could have this building comply with a single means of egress, but we did not elect to do that. There is a second egress stair at the upper end of the building that exits out to the sidewalk, but it's an exit-only door at the side of the building, and there's no communication with that stair to the lower level.
Thank you.
Good. So we have made, as these plans have evolved, working with Market Square, as we refine the buildings, we refine the site plan accordingly to make the two come together. There have been changes from what you saw before. This parking lot was shaped differently. We actually made it smaller, and this is part of the reduction in number of parking spaces is over here in this corner. As well as I think we reduced the parking numbers here, and I think we might have taken a couple off the center. But that reduced in that we have less rooms, we were able to reduce parking. We did, as John said, we did meet with the select board and have adjusted Colony Ave, as he talked about, which includes the sidewalk along this side and the entry stone walls along here and some of our crossings, and those were, again, as all agreed upon by the select board. We have changed, and these are sort of minor changes, but I guess I just want to make the board aware of them as we go along. We've changed some of the pathways. I won't say they've changed a lot, but we sort of made a different shape of this patio, for example. So this adjusted a little bit. We also adjusted this pathway, as we said. This stair got put in order to communicate sort of in-campus people, so people that are on campus at the colony can come down and walk down and get to the marketplace without having to go back out on the street. So that was the thinking behind this stair. And then with that stair, obviously came the ADA access that was required to facilitate for handicapped people down to that lower level as well. We've changed a little bit since you saw it last. Some of these, we had a very tall retaining wall along here. We've actually split that into two, so it steps up as you go. I'll zoom in a little bit so people can see. This is a lower wall here, retains, and then we're going to use this as some planting along here, and we're going to have a second. So those are retaining walls that we did kind of pull back and allowed for some planting in that space.
I have a question about that.
Sure.
I think you're going to have a couple of buried propane tanks over there.
Yes, yes,
Okay.
we are. Yes.
Well, where are they going to be? Between those two retaining walls?
No, there's one right here. We actually did move one of these, so we have one here, and we have one over here. So that was in sort of some of this refinement. We did originally have a propane tank here, in the last thing that you saw, but we had to move it out here based on moving this wall.
Okay, so to fill those, the propane truck just comes into the parking lot.
Exactly. It'll come in
I
here.
was just worried that he might stop on Ocean Ave or something to fill the thing, so.
Yeah, no, I think we can easily get them in here and they can fill from right here. So that was part of the thinking as well. And on this side, it was being able to get into this parking space and get to the fill over here on this end.
Okay.
So a series of utility changes, which this one's a little easier to read since we added color to it. But some of the utility changes that we made, sewer in our original design we had out here and discharging into Colony Avenue. We've taken it out the back, and one of the reasons for that is it's just less excavation on the backside of these buildings to get it down. It flows by gravity into the Colony Ave system. And we talked about that a little bit before, where all of this development ends up going to the Colony Avenue system, whereas some of the existing buildings here actually flow back here to the South Main Street pump station. So we're alleviating some pressure on that system, which obviously Mike Claus and the sewer department were excited about, that we made it a little bit better for that pump station by going gravity this way. Some minor alignments in water and electrical service. The green is the electrical service. We have met with Central Maine Power and discussed this at length with them about how we do the electrical service. Originally, we were trying to drop it down here and run it underground on Ocean Avenue and continue that all the way up and through. There's a pole right here that has a lot of wires, I guess is the best way to say it, coming off it. It feeds in this direction, it feeds across the street, it feeds this area. Moving that pole and relocating it would be a real challenge just from a serviceability standpoint. So we've decided to keep that pole where it is and drop underground from there and come up the side of Colony Avenue underground underneath that sidewalk, and then it comes back up overhead, back over on this end of the site. On the water service, we have been working with KK&W on the water service. So it does appear that they will be replacing the water main both in Ocean Avenue and Colony Avenue probably next spring. They being Kennebunkport KKW Water District will be replacing that. And we're going to coordinate that obviously with sort of reconstruction of Colony Avenue so that the timing is such that they replace the water main and then we do the work on Colony Avenue itself, so that you end up with a brand new, fresh paved, coated Colony Avenue in the end, rather than patches in it. So we will coordinate that over time with them and make sure that timing works out well. Lighting, we've talked a bit about lighting, I think with the board before, and we also did talk with Werner and the town's lighting. I don't know what his title is, Werner, but the lighting guy, I guess, from the town's perspective.
Sure, that would. You spoke with Jim Stockman. He's chairman of the lighting committee.
Lighting committee. Okay, thank you. And the idea here, I think, and what we have always said along the way, was that this would be almost residential type lighting, so that the lighting levels are kept low. They're all going to be night sky compliant, to be pointed down. These are anticipated to just be bollards along the side, so they'll be about 3 or 3.5 feet tall and point down and light the sidewalk areas. And there will be some lighting out on these entry stone gates on either side, just to light those up a little bit, but it's very low level lighting just to help designate where those entrances are. And we'll have some bollards again along the sidewalks kind of throughout here. Again, all intended to be just bollard lighting. The buildings themselves will obviously be lighted at the entryways, and very similar to what happens on the South Campus now is what is there now. So kind of keeping the same theme and idea on that side of things. We have presented you with a traffic study, traffic analysis that was done by Traffic Solutions. This is their trip generation from the proposed plan of the number of rooms that we have, which are 47 rooms, and also including the cafes, that there is a slight trip increase, as there would be with anything. These go from a net trip increase, I'll call it, of 21 to 36 is what the trip generation numbers prove out. Again, relatively small increase in traffic, given there's sort of this net of what exists there now versus what is being proposed, and when you net those out, that's what you end up with. There were.
Can I quickly help me understand? I hear your words. You're saying there's a small increase.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe I'm reading it wrong. It looks like you're doubling the number of existing trips. No?
They are going. Yep,
20's going to 40, 25's going to 46, 23's going to 50. What am I missing?
Yeah, sort of depends on the hour here. It's going from 20 to 23.
No.
25 to 21.
No, it's going from 20 to 43. It's going up by 23, is what I'm reading in this table. It's doubling.
It is a trip increase. So yes, I think you're right. It is an increase.
So it's not a minor increase. It's 100% increase.
In the world of traffic,
yeah,
23 trips is a minor increase. I understand you're.
Oh,
you're
I
correct.
see. I see.
Yeah, I was sort of. In the world of
quantitatively,
traffic,
it's not a big deal, but the fact of the matter is, it's a 100% increase.
Yes.
Or
yes.
more.
And it does not. Yes, it is that percentage-wise. You're correct, but in the world of traffic, it's a pretty minor increase. That 23 trips is very small. Matter of fact, it doesn't actually trip any sort of traffic study on either on the state or local level.
So
because it's minor.
So I understand, but in the residential neighborhood world,
mm-hmm.
If you're going from 20 trips to 50 trips, that's a big deal. In other words, if all of those are going down South Main Street by my neighborhood,
yep,
that's a big deal.
Yeah, if they were going that way, yeah, but they won't. They don't go that way. They don't all go that way. Very few probably will.
Actually, I would disagree with you on that too. So okay,
I would disagree as well.
Gotcha.
So that is that's the traffic part of this, I think. What else do we have? There has been a management plan that was put together by Wright Ryan that was included. I didn't put that there, but some of the things that are in the traffic management plan that we submitted by Wright Ryan are that our work will comply with MUTCD standards, which is just a manual of uniform traffic control design standards. So all their work is going to have appropriate signage and everything while they're under construction. And during construction, their hours will be limited from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Deliveries will be scheduled to avoid peak traffic hours to the extent possible, to the extent that they can. They're going to do everything to not have truck traffic and such coming down during peak hours. They are going to avoid Christmas prelude to the extent that they can on running their construction traffic up and down. And all deliveries will be required to come from Ocean Avenue. They will not take deliveries from South Main Street. So I think we certainly understand that South Main Street situation and are doing everything we can to make sure construction traffic stays off it. And Wright Ryan will be responsible for managing that through the process.
Is there some sort of written plan about how they're going to manage that?
Yes, it's in the in what you received, Ed, in the just looking for attachment C.
Thank you.
On the back of it, I think it's the last page on attachment C, and it talks about those items that I just listed off.
Okay.
So again, that's part of Wright Ryan's need to comply and work through those details, and they've assured us that they can do that and direct their subcontractors to do
Bill,
that.
to speak to that also, I was at the bidding process for some of these contractors, and Ryan several times mentioned that they wanted traffic going down Ocean Ave and not South Main Street. And we didn't run into any concerns from any of the contractors that would be an issue. So I just want to know that they have been very communicative about that with all of our subs.
Absolutely.
So while we're talking about this, can I just jump in for a second? So,
Sure.
Okay, I'm glad to know that they're going to try to direct the traffic along Ocean instead of South Main. And I know I don't know if this is feasible, but two questions come to mind. One is, okay, so there's going to be an increase, due to the redevelopment of the North Campus. But has there been a traffic study done to determine what the level of traffic is on South Main and or Ocean at the moment, and how much this increase would add to the existing traffic on those two roads? I don't know what the answer is. And then, of course, the other related question is is there some way to assess the impact of this additional traffic on the road condition? In other words, you're going to have more cars. We're going to have to repave the roads more often, because I know on South Main now there's quite a few areas that would benefit from some overlay. But is this increased traffic going to reduce the time between, re-asphalting? I don't know if either of those questions can be answered right now. Maybe you could take a look at it.
Yeah, happy to, Larry. The traffic study, just by numbers, as I said, isn't required by numbers, I guess is the best way to say that. And like I said, relatively minor in the traffic world of trips. My guess is that it wouldn't be noticeable, but that's just, I guess that's my opinion on it. The assessment on the road conditions, I think it'd be, from my perspective, it'd be hard to say that that number of trips really does anything, and those trips are all not going to South Main. We could probably come up with usually what traffic engineers do is they assess sort of what direction traffic goes in from this. A lot of these trips are based on, actually, if you look at, I don't have that table, estimated cafe restaurant trips.
Okay.
That's where a lot of these trips are. And I guess I find it hard to believe that a lot of those trips are going to be generated and go towards South Main Street. They're going to stay on Ocean Avenue. And this also assumes that all of these trips all the cafe trips come from off-site, which is, that's the way traffic calculations are done. But it doesn't make sense in this condition, because a good portion of these cafe visits are going to come from people on site. They're going to walk over from the hotel, grab something, grab a coffee and a donut for breakfast, and be on their way. So there is an overestimation, and that is pointed out in the traffic report by the traffic engineer. He cautioned that we have to be careful and understand that there's a significant number of trips that are coming from the cafe that are calculated but probably not realistic.
And Bill, would it be fair to say that the vast majority of these trips are anticipated to be passenger vehicles, passenger cars?
Absolutely.
So I have a background in highway department work, and what I'll tell you is that passenger cars create a very small portion of the wear on roadways. The majority of wear actually comes from larger vehicles. Highway tolls, in fact, are designed that way and charge those vehicles more. So in terms of wearing a road over time, passenger cars are wearing that road at a much slower rate than larger vehicles.
I may have been misunderstanding that this was meant to say what the traffic was going to be like during the development period, during the construction period. And you're saying, oh, this is all post-construction. This is steady state after all the construction people have gone home.
Absolutely. Yep.
So
That-
is
that-
there,
that's true.
so is there another page that shows what it's going to be like during the construction period, and where you would, Rob, be concerned about the amount of increased construction, heavy vehicles on South Main and Ocean? And what
I think
that
it's,
do?
I mean, I think that obviously there's not going to be the increase in cars during that time period.
Right.
And so those numbers will be very, I think that the increase in terms of number of trips generated during the construction time period will be relatively minimal. You're only going to be talking about vehicles for those who are working on site during the day. And then it's obviously what you're most interested in, I think, are the larger trucks providing deliveries. I think you're not going to have 10 trucks a day pulling up there. Those deliveries are going to be scheduled, and typically, right, Ryan, we'll schedule them to be off of peak hours because it will be easier for them to get those loads in and out. That's also typically why you're doing your paving of the new roadways at the end of projects, because you're not going to be driving over those roadways with those size vehicles. So,
and again,
I can't speak to the number of deliveries that happen during the course of a project. Some of those vehicles are fairly small. Some of those vehicles are going to be larger for larger components, but they're intermittent throughout.
So I think all of the construction traffic is relatively easy to control on the part of Wright Ryan, and those will all be directed away from South Main Street. They won't be allowed to come in. So I guess to answer that question, I think Rob brings up a good point. The heavier the trucks, the more it beats on the road, right? That's really the issue. And we're not going to have trucks or additional trucks headed to South Main Street. Are there going to be some cars that go to South Main Street after construction? Probably. But I think the majority of them will use Ocean Avenue. The other thing I think to keep in mind is that the construction is not going to be during the summer tourist season. So these trips are going to happen outside of the tourist season, not during the summer for construction. So those construction traffic trips will happen in, I guess, off season when traffic is less.
Hey, Bill, can I ask you some questions about this traffic report?
Sure.
They point out all of that, but they also point out that that on South Main Street and is a dangerous intersection, and they recommend the post signs to make it not just a one-stop sign there, but an always stop control to post signs. Is there any indication, or maybe Werner can answer this, that the Board of Selectmen is interested in doing that?
I don't know if Werner's there. Hey, we did have a conversation with Mike Claus about this idea, and Mike seemed in favor of it. Would like to see the sketch of it, which I have yet to get to him, but I think that conversation was last week. I will get that to him. The idea is to put a three-way stop at actually I can show you what that looks like. I think. So currently on South Main, as you come around this corner, there's not great sight distance. And that presents somewhat of a dangerous situation here if you're coming out of here. And it's not a three-way stop. It's a little bit of a free-for-all, as you guys probably all know, especially the ones that live down in that space. The idea would be to make this basically just these gray areas. Let me zoom in a little bit more. These are paved areas now. The idea would be to take away that pavement, make this the road, 20-foot wide road with a three-way stop sign rather than this yield stop sign that exists there today. In the traffic engineer's opinion as well as ours, it makes it a much safer condition at that intersection. verbally explained it to Mike Claus, and he said, yeah, that seems good, and he said, get me something on that. And this is the sketch, which we actually finished up today. So I'm gonna run that by Mike and make sure he's good with it.
Okay. The other things, couple other things the traffic report pointed out is that the ledge that you have, which I like so much, is causing some problems in sight distance. Are you planning to take out part of that ledge?
We are, and I'm searching for my plan here real quickly. So that ledge is, it's going to be a little bit of a delicate balance on that. I apologize for the scrolling here. I just got to get to the right plan. Of course, it's not that one. That ledge exists right here, Nina, and I'm going to zoom in a little bit on it. There's two things that Bill Bray mentioned in this. One of them is this ledge. We actually have the water main coming up right up along here. And in replacing that water main, some of that ledge is going to have to be knocked out just for that purpose in itself. So we are knocking it back. I don't know if you can see those contours right there, but that's sort of knocking that ledge back. The other thing that we're doing on the vertical profile, we call it, is this dashed line is the actual existing center line elevation, and it actually goes up to a high point there. We're rounding this curve off, so we're actually taking I'll call it the peak out of the top of that, which provides us for the sight distance that Bill talked about. He was talking about sight distance looking this way and this way, so that you can see over this hump. So we're confident that this change in vertical elevation actually corrects that problem, and this removal of some of this ledge, to your point, I think we would like to keep some of it because it provides a great visual point along the road, but we also have to provide for that safety, so we're balancing those two out.
So you are taking out some of the vertical grade on Colony Ave?
Absolutely, yeah. It's this.
Okay.
I don't know if you can see that dash line, but actual existing grades up here, we're taking probably about a foot out of the top of that hump, I'll call it. So,
okay.
Is that anything else, Nina?
Not on that. I have a comment on the stormwater report.
Okay.
The appendices are not included, so I don't have a map that I can look at.
Okay.
They refer a lot to they just refer a lot to the various appendices and soil types, and the fact that they're going to have a stormwater service do routine inspection, and the plan is not included either. So your appendices aren't in the report. Oh, and before I forget, I went back through my other reports, and maybe I'm missing it, but do you have an authorization letter directly from Boynton Hotels to oversee this and present to the planning board?
I do, and then I can make sure you have it. I think we did it in the last submission, but I will make sure you have that.
It may well be, but
Yeah.
I just couldn't find it. You have so many submissions there, and they're very thick.
Yes.
So.
Well, hence one of the reasons you didn't get the stormwater stuff, because I don't know if you can see that, but that's our stormwater report, and we did give it to Werner.
As long as it gets posted.
Yeah, just post it. Don't send it.
We'll do. And this is the stormwater plan that you're looking at right now. So the green areas, and just that was a great segue into the stormwater for me. So we took into account, I think, the comments that the board had it was probably back in January, and we talked about treatment of stormwater. And at that time, we weren't proposing any treatment of stormwater, but I think as we talked it through with John and thought about it a little harder, I think we all agreed that treatment of it could really benefit the site and also Fairfield Creek. So according to both the town regulations, according to town regulations, we don't have to do treatment, but according to the DEP regulations, the only treatment that we had, and we figured this out probably after January in discussions with DEP because they made an interpretation, we have 519 square feet or something like that we have to treat because of the trail that we're putting on the backside. That's the way the regulations read and what we have to do. What we have done instead of that is that we have taken this green area, which is this area, this is the North Campus that you're looking at. We're running it down through the storm drainage system into a focal point biofiltration system that's down here. So all of this green area is now being treated, which otherwise was not previously treated. It'll treat 46,789 square feet of impervious area on the North Campus. So all of this parking areas, the front side of these buildings, and this parking areas all get routed down and they get treated through this biofiltration system before discharge. The landscaped area represents 35,562 square feet. So in total, that's about 2 acres, I'll say, of land area that's going to be treated, either landscaped area or impervious area before it discharges off the site. That's on the North Campus alone. In total, it's 82,000 square feet, just above that, 82,300 square feet of area that's going to be treated. The idea here was, again, to run it through this system, and the system is going to be a small pond down here. And what it does is it treats, I'll call it the first flush. So this is building 1B over here, and building 2 is here. So it's kind of in back of the cafe. And what that is the stormwater will come down here. The first flush of runoff gets diverted into this system and treated, and then discharged. Higher flows bypass it, but that's pretty typical of stormwater systems. The first flush is where and what we need to collect and treat. So it's a specialized filter media in section. Zoom in on this a little bit. In section, it looks like this. So the water ends up, the stormwater comes in here. It goes down through this high flow media, which it'll put water through at over 100 inches per hour. And it flows down and into a underground, I'll call it a little bit of a storage tank, which just slowly discharges out of that system and into Fairfield Creek. In what it would look like, this is an example, not exactly what our plantings are going to be, but you can see it's sort of a natural system, and the water would come in here and again sink down through that media material and be discharged. We have done our pre and post drainage calculations, and in all of one, and we call this out in our stormwater report, all of our sub-watersheds or our subcatchments have a reduction in flow. And a lot of that is because we are taking some of the flow and directing it slightly in different directions, and going back to this. So we end up taking water that currently runs down Colony Avenue, and especially in the South Campus, when that ends up being constructed, and bringing it over here to be treated through this system before it discharges. So we have a very minor increase at this point into the tidal waters, which DEP should not have a problem with because it's a tidal water. They allow for minor increases into the tidal waters. We did look at that from an overall watershed study, and found out that there's a very minimal increase of, I don't know what it was, but it was less than 1/4 of an inch of elevation height in that might change that due to that. So it was relatively small. I guess our opinion was that minor increase felt better because of, in fact, we were treating the runoff through that system. So we could change that around, but we felt it important to sort of stick along those lines of treatment was as important as anything. We have submitted to the DEP for that 519 square feet of impervious area for a stormwater permit. We were accepted on June 3rd by the department for review of our stormwater plan, and they have 3 months to review that. So we anticipate that approval coming shortly. They've been actually turning them around a little quicker lately. So we should have an approval from DEP shortly. We haven't heard anything, we haven't heard any comments from them yet, any negative comments as of yet from them. I will skip quickly into shoreline zoning issues, and I think we went through this quite a bit with the board before. We have submitted all of the information, both existing and proposed conditions for our footprint and floor area within the 75-foot, our building volumes within the 75-foot, and our impervious areas within the 75-foot. And you have these in your packages. They're the F1s, the V1, and the I1 plans that are in your packages. All have the existing conditions, which show, this one, for example, is the impervious area within the 75-foot setback. This one is the volume within the 75-foot setback, this being the 75-foot setback, and these being the volumes that are within it. And on the floor areas, these are the calculations to show them in the existing conditions. We've worked very closely with Rob and Market Square in developing these buildings and making sure that they do in fact meet the post-development meets our allowable building within that 75-foot. For the footprint and floor area, we're allowed 12,800 square feet. Let me go to that one rather than the wrong one. And our proposed floor area is 9,194, so we're actually 3,600 square feet below our allowable of floor area in this space here, footprint and floor area. The building volume, which is this one, we have allowed volume of 113,608 cubic feet, and we have calculated it to be 111,684 cubic feet. So we're about 1,900 cubic feet below our allowable volume in our proposed buildings. And we have modeled these buildings here represent a computer model that Rob and his team provided us, and we've run through those numbers and verified them and calculated that they do meet those quantities that we're talking about. The impervious area is this one on I2 proposed. We have allowed 14,656, and we have a proposed of 7,212. So we've actually reduced the impervious area within this area by about 7,000 square feet, which is a significant, 7,400 square feet, which is a pretty significant decrease in that space from what the existing condition is. So I think that's it for volumes and setbacks and that. I don't know if you have any questions. I'd be happy to answer those, and if not, I'll turn it over to Rob for his description on the actual architecture and what's being proposed at this point. I'll start you up at the top here, Rob.
Thanks, Bill.
Just tell me what you want to see.
We'll just start there and work our way down.
Sure.
So I think all of you have seen these buildings before. The drawing set has changed tremendously since the last time you saw these buildings. What you are looking at for elevations has probably changed very little from what you saw last time. So I think the original concept design was provided by Windward Development for the client, and then we were brought on after those initial concepts as part of the Wright Ryan design build team for this project. And I think it was very easy for us to maintain those original concept drawings from an aesthetic standpoint, I mean, we're really working off the beautiful classical language of the existing hotel. And so these buildings are really meant to be in keeping with that. So what you're looking at there is the creek side of building 1. So those you're seeing the guest rooms on the second floor. That building has a lobby at the lower level. And so the upper floor has 5 rooms. This is all one building. It's all one connected building. So even though there's these sort of 3 chunks that are connected by the bridges, the primary services, elevators, stair core, that kind of things are in that center building, and then branch out to the 2 ends. So the central lobby is on that lower level, and that's what you're seeing out to that patio space. I know one of the comments that came up last time was regarding bird glass. All of the openings on this side will have screens. The windows and the doors on this side of the creek side of the property will have screens to mitigate that challenge. You're seeing those 2 inside ends, so those don't have a lot on them. They're sort of the internal components between the different chunks of buildings that you circulate through one of those bridges. So that's what you're seeing there is sections through the sky bridges, and then at the bottom of the page, that's the elevation that faces the parking lot. So that's the primary entry adjacent to those accessible parking spaces that we're looking at before. It's a single loaded corridor. So on the side facing the parking lot, that's lobby and corridor openings. The rooms are all on the creek side. And then the right and left portions of building 1, which we're calling B and C, those essentially mirror each other. Again, the creek side is at the top of the page. So those are the balconies of the units facing out. And then at the bottom of the page, that is the single loaded corridors facing the street. If you look at that bottom elevation on the left-hand side, that is where the secondary stair tower comes down, and there is an entry door over there as well. We've turned it a little bit to face the sidewalk because we do want the primary entry to be at the lobby space. And so those, once people are settled in their rooms, they may use that on a pedestrian basis, but not to take their luggage up elevators. And then because you have stairs and things, those end elevations are fairly simple. All of these elevations, it's white siding and red roof, what you're used to seeing at the Colony Hotel. And so again, that other end is just mirroring. And then on building 2, we just looked at this a little bit ago, but we have at the top of the page, you have those large overhead doors, and then the primary entry doors in the center that face the street view or the parking spaces for the grab and go market. And then to the grade change on the right, that's the primary entry to that second floor where we have 6 guest rooms. So just below that to the right, that's that sort of 1-story space that faces the parking for the guest rooms.
Are those all windows? The top drawing there that on the ground floor?
So those are glass overhead doors, which will roll up seasonally so that can be open air to the sidewalk. You still will need them to be down in the winter, obviously, and then that's why the center doors are located there.
Will there be an overhang on them so that they are sort of bird crash proof? Because, on both sides you've got them, and they, at least one side faces the east, faces the Kennebunk River area.
There are roll screens on that side. That's something that we're still investigating at those 2 overhead doors, is how best to utilize that. When the market is open seasonally, that's not an issue, but obviously we do want to make sure that we mitigate that challenge seasonally. And so there are screens that are available to roll across that side. So again, on the river side, that's all of the openings on that side are proposed to have screens. And then one comment I'll have here, this does not, we've taken some artistic liberties here. This does not exactly match the landscape plan. This is really just to show you what the building looks like in 3D. And so to block your view with plantings wouldn't make a lot of sense for that goal. So, but this is building 1. This is more or less, rendering of what we intend it to look like. So again, very much in keeping with the aesthetics and even the details, columns, and some of the balusters of the existing hotel.
Any questions for Rob on the buildings? I think the last thing I think I want to touch on is the project schedule. So this is the project schedule that Wright Ryan has put together and is actually included in your packages. There's 2 pages to it, but it has sort of the list of activities, general activities along this side, and then the timing of those activities. The blue areas represent the summer seasons, and those seasons, they do intend not to have any construction going on in there, and John can talk about that a little bit, but the idea is just to shut down construction during that season so that there's no noise that disturbs the guests either at the existing hotel or even in the neighborhood.
I think it's important to point out that those lines, even though they go through the blue summer season, they will not be perfect. There will not be activity during that. Go to the second page down, Bill. So right there's a perfect one. Phase 2 shows that it starts in the winter of 22 and goes through the summer. It only means that they're going to cease construction during the summer and then pick back up in the fall. So I want to make sure everyone's clear that we have no intention of doing phase 2 during the summer months. They're just drawing it through that because they're starting it, not completing it. So all those lines go from beginning to completion. I just want to make sure everyone understands.
And Colony Hotel doesn't want to do that, just like the town doesn't want to do that.
Exactly.
And that's been a very clear message that the entire project team has talked about from the beginning. The other thing I just wanted to mention, which I meant to mention earlier, is that beyond the folks that we've spoken about, we also are just about done with construction documents from structural, mechanical, electrical, plumbing engineers, fire protection engineers, interior designer. We have a landscape architect. So there's been a number of other folks on this project that have really put a lot of detail and effort into this. And all of that is so that, you know, what we're showing you, we want to have thought about all of those components to the extent that we can so that what we're giving you is really real.
You know, somebody mentioned earlier about construction vehicles, and you indicated that you wouldn't pave the road until construction vehicles were pretty much off the site. But, you know, you have a north campus here that you're putting together, and then you're going to have a south campus. So are you going to pave the road after you finish the north campus? What happens when you start the south campus?
You know, unfortunately, our leader from Wright Ryan is traveling in Alaska right now. He's the guy to really address that in detail. But basically what's going to happen is that for different components of construction, for instance, when they need to get into the roadway to put in plumbing, obviously they're going to need to do excavation. We're going to put something back so that it's drivable. And so typically you have a base coat that'll get put down that is easily able to be adjusted or portions of it removed for future work. The final coat that will be drivable doesn't happen to the very end of the different phases. And so, yes, you will have drivable surfaces that will be finished seasonally when they need to be, but throughout the process, there are going to be times where there's going to be work within the roadway, and then you don't really finish your paving. That's one of the last things you do after all the big trucks are done.
After all the big trucks are done on phase 2 and the south campus?
Yeah. Yeah, I think probably what we would do, Nina, is, and I don't know that we've fully thought through this, but I think what easily could be done and what typically is done in construction is we would go in and do Colony Avenue and put a base coat. We call it a base coat of pavement, and that's the bottom coat, if you will. Surface finishes come in at the end, and that would probably be done after the South Campus was complete. That would probably be the best.
And typically, Wright Ryan will file a construction management plan with the town, and so that will include things like where the perimeter of their construction fence is going to be, where their temporary dumpster will be located, how trucks will enter and leave the site, what time of day those trucks can enter and leave the site. And so those things will be coordinated with the town, and similarly, if there are any large loads that have to come through, that will have to be coordinated with the town as well, and that's typical for all construction projects.
Yeah. And for Colony, I guess maybe I didn't explain this very well, but like water main would go in and be put in, typical or likely that the water district will, I'll say, patch their trench. And then we'll probably come back in and actually reconstruct Colony Avenue. So as part of this, 650 feet of Colony Avenue is being reconstructed on John's, by the Boughton Group. So there'll be a brand new road on Colony Avenue for that first 650 feet up Colony Avenue. And as I said, that final coat can come in after the South Campus is complete.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I think, I guess just a couple of things to wrap up. As we said, we worked through.
Bill, before you leave this chart, though, could I ask a question?
Absolutely.
I want to make sure I understand the terminology. Phase 1 is the North Campus, is that correct?
No. So these are phases within the North Campus, Ed.
Okay, so we're only looking at the North Campus.
Exactly. That's all we're looking at. We are talking south, but that's.
No, that's fine.
Not in front of you right now.
But that's what was messing me up. So
Yep,
go back to where you were.
Yep. So that's, to your point, so phase 1 is building number 2, which is the one down on Ocean Avenue. And I guess just as basic schedule here, the idea is to get building 2 done by next spring, by next June, to get that work done, get the major earthwork done next winter, or this coming winter, I should say, on the North Campus, and get the foundation in for building 1. Then it would sit over obviously John will have building 2 to use for both market and the rooms above it. So the area around building 2 would be, I'll say, finished to the extent that it can. And then I'm going to say mostly building 1, which are the 3 sections of building 1, would happen in the following year, which would be 23 or the fall of 22 and 23, and be delivered in June of 23. So in about 2 years, if that makes sense.
You go down one page
Absolutely.
Where we were before. So coming back here, the title of the chart is phase 1, but it looks like that stops at line 240.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm not sure that's.
No, that's fine. You're always going to have stuff like that. But when you say that the work isn't going on in the summer, you do show then that you've got work going on in the summer on the interiors of building 1B.
Yeah, the intent really isn't to do that. I think this program doesn't depict it well, I guess is probably the best way to say that. And we can clarify this, Ed.
So somebody didn't add a constraint, you're saying, to push that to the right.
Yeah, I think that's part of it. And I think the other thing too, I want to be a little bit careful because I think there could be some minor interior work in the summer, but I think, right, for John and his group, it's going to be things that definitely don't create noise or traffic for their guests. So I wouldn't say that there's not going to be any drywaller or painter in there potentially, but the whole reason we have phases is to basically avoid the summers.
Exactly.
I understand. Please understand the reason for my question was I'm looking at the chart, I'm hearing what you're saying. I think I understand your intent, and where there's a discrepancy that I see that pops out at me, I just wanted to ask.
Yep, no, that's good clarification.
That's fine.
Yeah.
And I think that's something.
Also, let me observe that there's not a lot of slack in this schedule.
There's not. And that's something where Wright Ryan is really the master of this software, but that's something that we will pass along to them and ask them to break that down a little bit better.
And they're going to say, what do you want? A detailed schedule?
You got it.
Well, they can at least provide an explanation of what that means, those little overlaps. So we can certainly pass
or they say, yes, we recognize this and this is how we're going to handle it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're going to stop work on that date, or we're going to tailor it down, or.
Yeah, I think the idea in talking with John and a little bit with Wright Ryan about this was that primarily the construction is going to stop in the summer, with the exception there, as Rob said, there may be something inside. It might be somebody painting, or there might be somebody doing some electrical work. Something that is non-noise generating could happen, but the real intent is to try to slow it just as much as possible.
Your contracts will either incentivize that in some way or disincentivize bad behavior.
Right. Yeah, John's doing that.
John will definitely disincentivize that for sure.
One thing that I think you covered, and I might have had to step up for, but where did you end up on sidewalks on Colony, on Colony?
Let me switch back to.
There was a question as to whether the town was going to allow it or not, and then you were.
We did get the selectmen to agree on sidewalks. So the blue here represents what will be infilled, I'll say, Ed. So this area doesn't have sidewalk and this one does. And we're going to do sidewalks down through here. These will be concrete sidewalks, the same that exists over here on Ocean Avenue.
Yes.
So they will be concrete sidewalks, and they will be constructed by this group and paid for by the Boughton group to create those sidewalks. There was some pushback, and we sort of talked that through with the select board.
Yeah, and I think people were concerned about the long-term possible maintenance and
exactly. Exactly. And that's, I think, when we came back and said, concrete walks, safety is important here for everybody. I think everybody got the message.
Thank you.
Sure. So I guess I'll wrap real quick, and John, you can jump in as well. But we have, as we've said, this is a great segue. We have coordinated with the selectmen. We do have their approval to go into an agreement with Boughton to do this work on Colony Avenue. We have, as I explained, submitted to the DEP. We were formally accepted on June 3rd, I think it was. So 3 months is what they have to turn that around, and we should have that back relatively soon because they've been doing those a little bit quicker. And as we've explained and Rob eloquently put, we've advanced these drawings significantly, in my mind, well beyond what a planning board would typically see. So with that has come a very detailed site plan that addresses probably many more items that would usually be picked up later after approval. So I think all of us feel really good on the design side of things about what we've presented and what we've put forward here for you for consideration. So I think with that, John, do you have anything you want to add?
No, I mean, I think it was a great presentation. I thank everyone for their time. I feel like we've been working on this for quite a while, and we are still as excited about it now as we were when we met with you guys. Well, I think we actually met with you 2 years ago for the original sketch plan review. We'd love to answer any questions you might have. We've also, as you all know, have been meeting extensively with our neighbors and being very public and transparent about all the things we're doing, and we're going to continue that. And I had a meeting last week with hotel guests because we're not taking reservations for the buildings we're planning on demolishing. So there is a lot of questions from our customers as well. So I'm always giving presentations. So I'd love to answer any other questions people have. And I don't know, where are we going from here?
Well, the question is, do you consider this plan final enough that we should vote on its completion, or did we start public hearings on it, Tom?
I would think we're ready to do that.
Well, let me ask a related that same question a different way. Do you think, for example, that the stormwater plan is mature enough that you want to spend the money to have an independent review of it now? Or do you think it's going to evolve more, so you want to hold off on that?
I'm completely comfortable with having it reviewed at this point where we are at that place for sure.
So I think that's an indication, of where the plan is. Spending money is.
So I think that it is important that we get Acorn on this. I thought they had already done a preliminary review of something.
They had Tom, and we've adjusted things a little bit here and there, so they're going to have to take another crack at it. So
okay,
you understand that.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. So should I make a motion that this is a complete application at this point, subject to DEP approval and things like that? Okay. I will so move that this is a complete application subject to DEP approval and review of stormwater plan.
there a second?
Okay, I'll second that.
Okay, and I'm in favor. Nina?
I'm in favor.
Larry Brown.
In favor.
Larry, I was
In favor.
right my down order. So anyway, Scott is still not here. So anyway, Ed,
Yes, I'm in favor.
Larry, you already said you were.
Yeah.
Okay. So that one of you guys, pick one.
I'm in favor.
Oh, okay. And so it is deemed complete. We're looking at a public hearing next time, beginning of August. I do have one additional question just to understand the status. What's happening with the South Campus?
John, I'll let you answer that, actually.
Yeah, so we are re-looking at the green roof building. It's really causing a little bit of a grade question, and we're sort of moving buildings around. We're still moving forward with that, and we're feeling good about it. I know that the architects are working hard on some of those changes, but they are becoming a challenge with how the new buildings, especially the green roof, ties into the existing what do I want to say, basically grading. So we're still working through those things. We want to make sure we build something that as beautiful on the South Campus and well thought out as on the North Campus. So we are still working hard forward on that, and also finding out how the buildings are going to interact. The North Campus is slightly easier due to the fact that it's pretty much all new construction. Now we're getting, you guys know this enough, that when you are starting to tie in old buildings, especially 125-year-old buildings, into a new construction, you start the building pushes back on the project a little bit. Its own life sort of defines what we're doing, if that makes sense.
The building, when you're going to do it, is still a couple of years out then, after you finish phase 2.
Well, I think it's going to be a fluid thing. I really do think, we're still moving forward with the planning part of it. We still want to continue to try to develop the concept and get the buildings to work together. So I don't foresee necessarily a completion required for starting the next phase.
Yeah.
On the building pushing back, it's not a Stephen King kind of moment, is it?
My day is a Stephen King
Because you're
moment.
freaking me out a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit.
Okay.
Okay. So in terms of the application, do we have to get a progress report at some point in order to continue the Werner? Is there an issue of how long we can have we've already had a presentation of the South Campus. Do we have to?
Yeah. I mean, process-wise, it's helpful to get progress. Get a progress update. That way the application remains active in front of the planning board. So otherwise, if we have too much time, where there's no updates or conversation, then we start from the beginning.
And we can certainly coordinate with you on that, Werner, and figure out our dates and get back to you. But great question.
Yeah, we'd like to get this one finished first, I think. You want to do some building this year, so.
Yeah, it was kind of a bite at a time, if you want to know the truth.
Understood. Okay, well, I think we're done till next time for you guys, and I'll take one more motion. Although I just want to state again how happy we have been with Lisa and how much we're going to miss her. So.
Here.
That's true. Yep.
Yeah.
So anyhow, I'll take a motion for the meeting.
Move to adjourn.
Who else second it?
Okay, I think we're all in favor, but if you could, yay.
In favor, yeah.
We'll see you guys next time.
Thank you all.
Thank you all very much.
Bye-bye.
I've got a question just for the board here real quickly, before everybody disappears. So Growth Planning Committee was looking and wanting to maybe do a joint meeting with you all, just in terms of talking about their work on the comprehensive plan update. And I wanted to put that out there. We were looking at a tentative date of August 17th. And this would be an in-person meeting at the fire station. So I just wanted to throw that out there. just to get, get some thoughts on that. So
What day of the week is the 17th?
that's a Tuesday.
Okay.
Yeah. So it would be at their regularly scheduled time.
Which
Okay,
is,
yeah. What time is it? 6 o'clock?
Yeah, I think the plan right now is 6 o'clock. I don't hear that we're going to be. I don't have any thoughts yet or hearing that we're going to bump back to what the typical time frame was, which was a 7 o'clock start. Personally, I prefer the 6 o'clock as opposed to a 7 o'clock, but but I think we all kind of followed the lead of the selectmen, relative to the virtual meetings. I do suspect, and I don't have it officially yet, but I suspect that our meetings in August will be transitioning back to the fire station. So,
If we're going to make the 6 o'clock, we should make a change to our rules.
Yep. Make a change to the bylaws. Yep, if we're going to remain at 6. But yeah, I agree.
So, all right. Well, we were already adjourned, so we'll see you guys later.
Okay.
okay, bye.
Yep. Thanks,
Bye-bye.
bye.
Right on.
Bye.
Bye.